Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Ooh, baby. It's getting good. Sauce Walker and go, yeah, yeah. Hey, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So Kid Cudi is supposed to take the stand and talk about the intimidation attempts. More XXX boy toys. Ooh, excuse me. Supposed to take the stand. I wonder if they're going to, I saw a girl earlier. She talked about Department of Justice expert. Diddy trying to, he feeling the heat. For all the ones who think he gonna beat that, he ain't feeling that way. He ain't feeling that way. He ain't feeling that way. He wants the Department of Justice financial expert or somebody. He trying to secure some of his money for his kids' future. Because them twins saying they ain't going to college. They done froze some his assets. He ain't got no money. Them kids ain't got no money. Lord, what in the world they gonna do? Them twins say they not going to college. Why? You know what I was thinking just a minute ago? Why Jay-Z them and Beyonce? The B. Kamora Lee, you know. All of them. Russell. Why they not putting them kids through college? Why they not supporting their homie? I would at least expect for them to say, nah, baby girl, y'all gonna go to school. We got you until your daddy can get this together. I mean, they don't want no parts of it, do they? I said, oh. They don't want no part. They ain't gonna even have the girls. Huh? I think that's jacked up, messed up, don't y'all? Also, what else I heard? The Department of Justice. I can't wait till Jonathan get up there, baby, with his half 50% of his brain cells gone. And the Punisher, he back up there today too, ain't he? Ooh, la, 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 la. Okay, y'all, so I'm gonna go in on here. I'm gonna tap back into girl, what she talked about the Department of Justice, him needing an expert to try to help him keep some of his money, cause the feds done froze it up and ain't gonna let it go, just in case they have to seize it all. He trying to secure something for his kids. He played himself too far to the left. Let's go. AunTeaFee, are you enjoying this? Yes, indeed. Let's go.
Psychologist, a former employee of Combs, and then, if there's time, rapper Kid Cudi could be on the stand this afternoon. Sean?
We know you will be in the courtroom. Great to have you there. Kara Scannell, thank you very much. This morning, former President Biden pushing back on Republicans questioning the timeline of his cancer diagnosis.
Do we care? Yeah, come on. Get well soon. Please come in, hitting the like button. Come on, this is their volume issue.
Ventura, the jury briefly heard from her mother, who testified that Combs beat her daughter when he learned of her involvement with Kid Cudi. The mother took photos of her daughter's bruises and said Combs demanded that she wire him $20,000. The jury also heard from a male exotic dancer who testified that Combs paid him to have sexual encounters with Ventura in hotel rooms. CNN's Kara Scannell outside the courthouse for the latest. What we expect today, Kara.
John, as you said, the rapper Kid Cudi could be on the witness stand this afternoon. He had a relationship with Ventura, and it is...
Oh, you didn't? Why? So that goes to the issue of credibility. It goes to the issue of bias. Going further into it, now prosecutors want to know, by the way, defense wants to know, you're suing him. Is that fair to say? And that is Sean Combs.
He don't feel confident.
And as a result of that, you have a financial motivation. Isn't that true? And so, yes, of course, you're going to have witnesses. Every witness is going to try to check a box for prosecutors to prove the overall goal that they're trying to make, that this was a criminal enterprise that dealt with sexuality and this exploitation. And you're going to have the defense say nonsense. It's about free will. It's about witnesses who are bitter, who are motivated by a number of things, and that their client certainly knew that people had free will and agency. And he did, right? Nothing criminal. He did and engaged in a freaky lifestyle to his liking. So those are the narratives that are competing, Polo.
And finally, how
That's
many
beyond freaky,
boxes do you think the prosecution has been able to actually successfully check? And looking ahead to the next witnesses, do you think that the questioning should really focus on his history of domestic violence, or perhaps shift gears and focus on that criminal enterprise element?
Yeah, what they have to do is that prosecutors need to establish that he had this enterprise and that he was running an enterprise, and that enterprise consisted of kidnapping, consisted of arson, consisted of all of this bad behavior that you see enterprises have, this assaultive behavior, these guns, these drugs, and he was running it exclusively for his sexual gratification. What you'll see, Polo, is each witness attempt to check a box in that regard. Is it an overreach? It remains to be seen. Many in the defense community believe that the issue about running a criminal enterprise might be a bridge too far. Could this be certainly issues pertaining to prostitution? Yes. Sex trafficking? Potentially. But running a criminal enterprise as opposed to an enterprise that was predicated upon being a music mogul is a different story. And so I think they will continue to. One witness is going to establish your case. It's going to be a series of witnesses over a series of time that's either going to show what this was indeed, as we look at those pictures there from the hotel.
He's seeking help from the Department of Justice. Hell, that's the feds, ain't it? That's
to build and build
hanging charges against them.
What
type of
a foundation of an enterprise, a foundation of sexual exploitation, a foundation of the sex trafficking, a foundation of prostitution is going to remain to be seen as they bring forth witnesses day by day, week by week.
There is a lot to watch out for, Joey Jackson, and we are so happy to have you there to provide this valuable insight. Appreciate you, Joey. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Paul. You too.
Sex trafficking trial of Sean Combs, who could hear soon from rapper Kid Cudi about his relationship with Cassie Ventura. The jury briefly heard from her mother, who testified that Combs beat her daughter when he learned of her involvement with Kid Cudi. The mother took photos of her daughter's bruises and said Combs demanded that she wire him $20,000. The jury also heard from a male exotic dancer who testified that Combs paid him to have sexual encounters with Ventura in hotel rooms. CNN's Kara Scannell outside the courthouse for the latest. What we expect today, Kara.
There go the African motherland.
John, as you said, the rapper
Ooh.
Kid Cudi could be on the witness stand this afternoon. He had a relationship with Ventura, and we're in the moment of this case where the testimony has been about that. That is in part what Cassie Ventura's mother testified about yesterday when she said that she'd received this demand from Combs for $20,000 that she said she felt she had to pay for her daughter's safety. This comes as Cassie Ventura had sent her mother an email saying that Combs was about to go public and release 2 sexually explicit videos. And she also told her mother that Combs had threatened to have someone physically harm herself, that's Cassie Ventura, as well as Kid Cudi, who she started dating at this period in their relationship. So that all comes together as how prosecutors were suggesting the mother made this payment of $20,000. Now, the $20,000 was returned with no explanation. But it is part of this moment in the testimony where that's where we expect Kid Cudi to be asked about that, as well as his car blowing up. That was something that Ventura had also testified about when she was on the witness stand last week. When court resumes shortly, it will be an agent from the Homeland Security Investigations back on the witness stand. His testimony started yesterday. He was involved in the search of Combs' Miami home, and he was showing the jury some of the evidence that they recovered, including lingerie, baby oil, lubricant, as well as AR-15s. And he was on the witness stand. There was a metal evidence cart beside him. He put on blue latex gloves, picked up a piece of one of the AR-15s in the evidence bag, cut it open, took it out, and walked it over to the jury so they could see the machinery in person. In addition to the parts of the gun, they also show the jury magazines and bullets that that were found in Combs' bedroom closet. His testimony will resume, and then they are also expected to get to a psychologist, a former employee of Combs, and then, if there's time, rapper Kid Cudi could be on the stand this afternoon. John?
We know you will be in the courtroom. Great to have you there. Kara Scannell, thank you very much.
Are they repeating
This
the
morning-
same stuff?
Oh, you didn't? Why? So that
No, they
goes to
just
the issue of
repeating the same
credibility. It
stuff.
goes to the
Hold on.
issue of bias. Going further into it. Now,
They're also expected to get to a... This comes as...
defense wants to know he was running an enterprise, and that enterprise...
well as
Sex trafficking trial of Sean Combs, who could hear
So they just
soon
repeating just the
from
same stuff.
Sean Combs, and as a result of that, you have a financial motivation. Isn't that true? And so, yes, of course, you're going to have witnesses. Every witness is going to try to check a box for prosecutors
Okay, hold
with the
on.
overall goal that they're trying to make, that this was a criminal enterprise that dealt with sexuality and this exploitation. And you're going to have the defense say nonsense. It's about free will. It's about...
Sean Diddy Combs back in court today for day 8 of testimony in his sex trafficking trial.
It follows another day of more dramatic testimony in which prosecutors called Cassie Ventura's mother and a male escort known as the Punisher to the stand, as well as Diddy's former personal assistant. Let's get right to Good Day's Briella Tomasetti. She has been following this trial since it started last week. She has the latest from the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Briella, good morning.
Yeah, Tashani and Dan, good morning. The first to testify was that former personal assistant, David James, who said that he prepared hotel rooms for freak-offs stocked with baby oil, lubricant, Viagra, and condoms. Next up was Regina Ventura, the mother of Diddy's ex-girlfriend, Cassie. Ventura testified that Diddy demanded $20,000 from her and threatened to release explicit sex tapes of her daughter after learning that she was dating someone else. The man she was seeing at the time, rapper Kid Cudi, could take the stand today or tomorrow after he too was called to testify about his brief relationship with Cassie and how Diddy allegedly tried to firebomb his convertible. Ventura said that she used a home equity loan to pay Diddy out of fear for her daughter's safety. Days later, she added the money was returned and Cassie was dating him again. Defense attorneys declined to cross-examine Ventura, but we heard from her lawyer outside the courthouse.
It went well. It was a relatively short direct examination, no cross-examination, so the government got out all the testimony that they needed, and the defense obviously felt that they didn't need to ask any questions, so it went very smoothly.
At the The jury also heard from Sheree Hayes, an exotic dancer known as the Punisher, who said he was hired to participate in Diddy's freak-offs. He said he arrived at a Manhattan hotel room expecting to perform a striptease for a small group of people, but walked in to find Cassie alone with Diddy, who was wearing a face covering. Hayes alleges he was instructed to have sexual encounters with Cassie and was paid with stacks of cash. Then Homeland Security agent Gerard Gannon testified about last year's federal raid at Diddy's mansion in Miami, mentioning that investigators rammed through the gate in an armored vehicle. They recovered AR-15s, high heels, lingerie, sex toys, and more. After Gannon's testimony, the jury was dismissed for the day. He returns back to the stand when court resumes this morning. For now, though, we're live here in Lower Manhattan. Dan and Tashani, back to you.
So much interest in this case, Briella, in this trial. But
Good morning for everyone that's coming in. Please come in hitting the like button. I would greatly appreciate it.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, watch out.
Watch out. The insurance company's job is to do what's best for them, not for you.
Kid Cudi is expected to testify. Let's see how much his testimony will enhance Cassie's testimony, which will enhance the mom's testimony. Now, one of the most disturbing, shocking things is, did Diddy admit defeat?
Yep.
Diddy has hired a former Department of Justice expert because he is now moving to protect his assets. You guys, Diddy seems like he thinks that it is over. Diddy seems like he thinks that he will be found guilty. Why is that? Because if you guys don't know, Diddy is in federal foreclosure. What does that mean? The government has basically temporarily put a hold on all your assets, basically saying we anticipate for you to be guilty, and when you are found guilty, we are going to take everything you own, the cars, the money. Now get this, right? Diddy has about $50 million in cash assets. Liquid assets are different than other assets, okay? He has about $400 million in art, cars, real estate, those houses. However, he only has $50 million legal assets. He is burning through money. That is why he made the Diddy meme coin, because he needs more cash assets. But there is a $400 million asset kingdom that he can liquidate and be sold. The government plans to liquidate that, and that could be used to make his victims whole. Oddly enough, Cassie could actually get more money. All the victims actually could. But on top of that, so what is Diddy doing? He's hiring a Department of Justice expert that is an expert in forfeiture law because he wants some of his assets released. He's thinking that if he is found guilty, he wants to make sure that he leaves enough either for himself, if he ever sets the light of day, or leaves something for his children. Now listen, this is a smart legal move to do. However, we cannot forget, it's also showing that Diddy is not so confident he's going to win. And he is finally waking up and making moves any way he can to make sure that there is something of his kingdom left. Now, will that work? What is this? I tried new gel today, guys. Okay, sorry. Miss Gina, what's up? Thank you so much for the super chat. Also, we are live on the line. If you guys are looking for line sitters, what's your name?
Line sitter.
Yes? So, John, remember that face. He is a line sitter. He will hold, if you pay him $150, he's out here every day. He will get you.
Special deal.
It's a special deal.
People, maybe you get it.
A few people, but if you guys are looking to get in, there are people that will hold your place in line for you, or you slip them $150 cash, and they let you in. As you guys know, it is a circus to get in here. I did not use John, even though plenty of people do. I just elbowed my way in. Y'all know how I do. But let's get into this. What does it say for Diddy's larger thing that he is so insecure, right? That he is so insecure that he is not going to win, that he is literally doing whatever he can to ensure that some of his assets do get taken. Also, I want to give a shout out to Peggy. Peggy said, my first time here, your reporting is awesome. Thank you, Peggy. So anyway, listen, let's get into this report. What Diddy actually knows, and what should we look out for? Okay, so what is it? The houses, the Star Island. Now, the funny thing is, I don't know what's going on in Diddy's camp, and I'm not in their business, but his twins just announced that they're not going to college. Is that really the best thing? I think you need education now that your daddy ain't rich, but your mama does remain good looking. We also need to look at what's going on with the Combs boys. They're largely living off of social media money. I think it's a bunch of looky-loos. However, as Diddy gets put away and he leaves in shame, what is the value of being Diddy's son, Diddy's daughter, once this trial actually moves over? Quincy is very talented with acting. Christian, I mean, he's trying to get a struggle rap career going, but I don't know. Also, you look at Justin. He was managing the Combs empire. Justin just better pray he's not named a co-conspirator. Diddy is doing everything he can to protect something for his children. And I think to also protect something for himself. He didn't take the 15-year plea deal. People are saying, sorry, my eyes were in. He didn't say, the 15-year, he didn't take the 15-year plea deal. He is, oh God, I ran out the house today. When I say I woke up and got out the house in 23 minutes, here's the fit. I will say one thing. I do like these blazer dresses. If you run out, slap a half wig on your head, and run out the house, baby, it looks like you did good enough. Y'all see that the blush isn't really blended, but you know what? What can we do? There we go. All right, y'all. I should have did a heavier eyeliner too. You know what? Let's focus, right? Anyway, Diddy is, what was I at? Dragon Diddy, but what part? Oh, Diddy is focused on leaving something. Now, people are saying that he might be regretting actually leaving that plea deal on the table. They gave him 15 years. He said, no, now you're protecting your assets. My opinion, he should have took that 15 years. But again, it is what it is when it comes to Diddy. Oh my God, right? I'll say one thing. Listen, this is directly from multiple media outlets, specifically USA Today, said, but in a sign of how serious the disgraced entrepreneur is taking the asset forfeiture effort, his lawyers have hired as the consultant, the former deputy chief of the Justice Department's Asset Forfeiture and Money Laundering Section, USA Today has learned. So Diddy's spending like, hey, what's up? Diddy is spending like upwards of millions on this person to try to keep him, his money in. They said Stephen Casala, who serves as an expert witness and consultant to law enforcement agencies and wrote 2 books on the topic, has trained thousands of prosecutors and federal law enforcement agents across the U.S. and their counterparts overseas. So he wrote the laws, but he would also be the one to write whether Diddy can keep stuff. They said Casala said he would not comment on the specifics of Diddy's case because of his involvement in it. Broadly speaking, though, he told USA Today that by charging Diddy under the Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act, or RICO, the government is taking an aggressive approach to seizing as many of Diddy's assets as possible. But in an ominous sign of prosecutors' intentions, Trustee said, the Diddy indictment and related court documents essentially target all his business and personal assets. But here's the thing.
Hey guys, my name is Harris Heller, and I've been a full-time YouTuber for over 10 years now. And if you are a YouTuber or you're trying to
his business and personal assets. But here's the thing. He used his employees to go on with this criminal organization. So of course, the business would be involved. You use the funds. Everybody talks about the SMEX workers. Everybody talks about Cassie. Did Diddy use his own funds, or did he use the funds that he earmarked for Cassie's album and for artist development? Everybody acts like Diddy was doing so much, but everybody acts like Diddy was doing so much. But when you think about it, Diddy was actually the person that was using Cassie's advance money to trick on her. Again, Diddy was grimy from the beginning.
Yeah,
they said they've written a very broadly worded forfeiture allegation. This is the expert Diddy specific explanation of what the feds are going after. Baby, listen, they're also looking into, now listen, let's trick to something funny. If you guys don't know, I did a funny live the other day where it was a hot or not smash or pass Diddy smacks picture of Flash apart and find out they were Diddy's freak-off partner. Now, at the end of the day, I mean, was it such a bad deal? You got money and you got to sleep with Cassie. They said Diddy didn't touch him. He just stood in the corner with a burqa over his head and naked from the waist down, from the neck down, right? And stood in the corner, did stuff. A lot of men said they couldn't concentrate. I said, I can't even concentrate listening to this. Oh, really quick, let me say thank you to you guys. Also, Leslie Murray said, good morning, Tisa. Good morning, sunshines. We also have Lily said, I've seen you from Someone's Live on TikTok. Good morning. Also, Miss Gina said, I'm loving your content from Sacramento, California. What's up, Sacramento? Robin Teller said, thank you, Tisa. Coffee on me. Coffee and some candy in the cafeteria. I will say one thing. The Southern District of New York, I mean, the cafeteria looks like the hospital cafeteria, but the salads look kind of good. I haven't gotten one because who the hell is eating a salad? That's something you eat on your couch in the living room, not like while you're trying to only have 30 minutes for lunch. But the salads look pretty good. I would say pack your lunch. Stop by Trader Joe's. They got better stuff than what's going on in this courtroom cafeteria. But everybody is nice. Ozzy Small, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. Make sure y'all thank Ozzy. YY said, make up look a beat tutorial, please. Y'all, I'm on Snapchat every morning. I do the get ready with me to go to the Diddy trial, where y'all see me running around crazy, doing my makeup, doing whatever, and talking about what's going on. Waiting for the tea. Let's go, baby. You're the best girl. Oh, thank you. Thank you for this amazing coverage. And please do be safe. Don't worry, y'all. I am safe. Thank you, you guys, for helping me fund my security, funding where I stay. I really do appreciate it. And also, I hope you guys know, I know I didn't do $100,000 thank you to subscribers or 500,000. I know y'all think I don't know this, but please consider me being out here as a love letter to you guys to actually show how grateful I am. And honestly, I wasn't going to come because I looked at the prices in New York and I was like, please. However, so many of you guys asked me, and honestly, I was reading through the comments and I said, you know what? I'm gonna do it. So I just popped out. I didn't even say anything because even before I got the ticket, I was like, am I gonna get on this plane? Because if y'all know anything about me, I am good for not getting on planes. Like, yeah, I decided not to go. And you called me and I'm sitting on the couch in my pajamas talking about what's up. So I'm good for not getting on a plane. And I wasn't, but I'm glad I did come out here because this has been fascinating. Also, Lindy Alo said, have they said anything about the tunnels under the house? They have not said a word about the tunnels under the house as of yet. But keep knowing that we're only 8 days in. And the prosecution has 28 or 32 days, and then Diddy has anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. So we're you guys, we're in week 2, which will shape up to be maybe 8 or 10 weeks. Victor Wiggins said, keep grinding, baby girl, and be safe. Thank y'all so much. And BB said, go get you some Trader Joe's. Listen, y'all think I'm not? I've been, you guys, I finally figured out what's going on. I've been breaking out because I've been eating a lot of takeout, and I think I figured out what it is. Don't laugh. I think it's seed oils. I think whatever ish they put in takeout, I think I'm allergic to. Experts? Oh no. I forgot my. No, let me tell you something. And this is where Diddy is getting messed up. These experts will run your pockets, right? These experts, oh no. I forgot a new notebook. These experts will run your pockets. I think what's going on here is Diddy, is hiring everybody. He's desperate. Again, this looks like a sign of desperation that he thinks he is going to be convicted guilty. And he was trying. This expert is not going to be treated. But also, I do want to say this. This expert is just trying to get paid. You know, it's like me hiring somebody to assess my house. Of course, they're going to come in and be like, oh my God, what a fine house. Look at this. This is where, because the more they seem like they can make you, the more you're willing to pay. So it has not escaped my attention that when it comes to, that when it comes to all these experts saying that they're going to do all these amazing things for Diddy, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? Can somebody please explain this to me? Do you know what I'm saying? In any case, I think that Diddy's pockets are being fleeced. I love to see that for him. I also do think that when it comes to these experts, this forfeiture, they have them dead to right. Do you understand how hard it is to get around federal forfeiture? Even if you're innocent, maybe taking a baby's crib, they do not care. So for Diddy to spend, I would estimate upwards of $1 million to even get this guy to actually look into it and see, he is desperate. Again, I know you got to spend money to keep your money, but federal forfeiture laws are some of the hardest laws to get around. And even if it's RICO stuff, if he is convicted, anything that was bought by Diddy would. Now, I know they think they're in like trust, they might be in Combs Global, they might be in business names, but there is something called the lifting the corporate veil. What does that mean, right? Corporate corporations are treated as people, and they're treated as people separate from you. However, there is a price to pay. When it comes to the IRS, you must have a corporate veil, which means there must be a clear separation between you and the business, meaning you don't intermingle funds. So I don't use like the business as my own personal piggy bank. There must be a way where the business pays bills. I don't pay the business. On top of that, you cannot have complete control over the business. The business must operate separate from you. Again, it is a separate person. It is a separate person. When, for legal purposes, for tax purposes, when it comes to piercing the corporate veil, that's what they do on forfeiture. They say, listen, this might be an LLC and a corporation, and technically it's not you, but Diddy, you used it as your piggy bank. There was no separation. You were the corporation was you, and this was just a facade for U.S. tax avoidance for you to get
there
a better corporate tax. That is what piercing the corporate veil. That is what's going to happen that's what's going to happen.
Baby, let's be clear. Ooh, let's be clear. Not clear, clear. If they don't get you one way, they will absolutely get you another. So anybody who think he innocent is crazy as a Bessie bug. Even he know he not innocent. He know his ass in trouble. That's why he is hiring Department of Justice experts, people who are familiar with the process, to see whatever loopholes they can come up with to get his ass out of this hot, heated, devilish trouble that he is in. Let's be clear. Not clear, clear. Let's be clear. Let's go.
With the federal forfeiture law, they're going to pierce the corporate veil. And if they do, the RICO charges pierce the corporate veil. So the only way that Diddy can keep these assets, if he's convicted, hold on, we're going in.
All right, welcome to the courthouse. We'll be opening up shortly. First things first, there's no weapons of any type, there's no lighters. Okay? Weapons of any type means tasers, mace, all those items. Please.
Hold on, y'all.
Everyone uses the internet.
Well, what you may have out there, you can't come in with them, okay? Secondly, telephones, all those electronics have to be turned off, okay? You'll be going through a screening process. If you have any laptops, any other...
Let me turn my phones off.
They will be screened as you go through. Please have them items on and turned off. The first line going in today will be the public line, okay?
Oh, yeah, we're going in first.
And that will be the
Diana
press
B,
line.
thank you so much for the support.
So, I ask you for your cooperation. We'll try to get you screened as quickly as possible. If there's any questions, feel free to ask, okay?
All right,
here we go. Shortly. Thank you very much.
My Instagram name for a spot in the line tomorrow is I'm Hollywood Creeper. A Hollywood Creeper. Hollywood Creeper.
Okay, Mr. Creeper. If you guys want a spot in line, Hollywood Creeper. But anyway, the only way that Diddy will be able to save his assets, and this is just my opinion, is if he beats the RICO charges. It does not at all look like Diddy is going to beat the corporate charges at all. Nope. It does not look like Diddy is going to beat the corporate charges at all. I mean, sorry, the RICO charges at all. So I really don't understand how they're going to do this piercing of the corporate veil. But you know what? You live and you learn. Okay, also, really quickly, I just want to give a shout out to everybody. Thank you so much. Don't forget to turn on your notifications. Look, this is Secret Service Sam. Y'all remember Secret Service Sam?
Hey, Secret Service.
He was the one that broke the story that Rock Nation was sending investigators out to intimidate people that were talking about what's going on with the whole JC thing. Anyway, y'all, listen. Thank y'all so much for joining. I will see y'all in a little bit. Turn your notifications on. I sneak out of court plenty of times. As soon as Kid Cudi's done testifying, I'm going to run down and tell y'all what I heard. There's going to be two.
Let's see if she have an update. And let's be clear. Did he know his ass is in trouble? That's why them girls can't go to college. Who gonna pay for it if they don't froze them funds? So they finna work the system, I guess the modeling, and I don't know. I did some research and it said that their net worth is like $1 million each. Condolences to Al B. Sure. He lost his mom. He did a very sad, hold on, let me show y'all. Hold on. Let me see. I saved it to myself. And let me see if she has anything else. Well, I'm looking for this. Yeah, shout out to the Brown family. His family in Quincy. He lost his mom. What was this? I sent to myself. Hold on.
Diddy knew that he was.
Yeah. Before I get to Albert.
Diddy knew that he was going to be arrested, right? So he flew to New York. He knew the government was going to apprehend him. The feds were coming. So he goes to New York. He's got 11 days. He's in the Hyatt Regency Hotel. I don't want to laugh because it's just, but what a psycho sicko is this guy. He brings a bunch of baby oil and all the accoutrements for a full-blown freak-off before they arrest him.
He couldn't help himself.
Like, no contrition, no like, who am I? What am I doing here? He's like, think I can squeeze in a freak-off before they come for me?
Sickening.
That's commitment and a deep level of psychosis. And, I mean, sex addict, he's not, that's not even being contested. I mean, he's the first one to say, oh, yeah, that's me.
I hear you, Leo.
Knew that he was going to be
I hear
arrested,
you, Leo.
right? So he flew to New York.
I mean, that's a way to look at it. And they say 50 Cent is still trolling the heck out of him. Most likely to get caught with 784 gallons of lube. He is absolutely trolling. He was going to an all-boy Catholic school. All boys? Dang, they set him up, didn't they?
Question is,
Bless his heart, Lord. A moment of silence for Al B. Sure and his family. And here's the article. We're saying Jesse and Delilah Combs revealed they're not going to college. Wow. This really didn't have to be this way, y'all. And we know it. But greed, making deals with the devil. Greed. Okay, so she has not updated since. So let me get back out there to the nitty and the gritty.
If your cat has FELV, don't worry. Felife's proven to eliminate the virus. Please, treat your cat with Felife and retest in 6 to 8 weeks to see the result.
It's a very pleasant day, right? Not bad, right?
But it's got to be just more than him.
So interesting.
Hold on, y'all.
Cassie Ventura's mom. We.
And oftentimes humiliating, the victim only turns to the abuser, creating that very powerful bond. So Dr. Hughes claims a trauma bond has a sense of hopelessness and makes a victim feel that they are unable to leave. The first person on the stand, though, was a continuation of yesterday. This is a Homeland Security Investigative Special Agent Jared Gannon testifying about a raid to Sean Diddy Combs' Star Island, Miami home back in 2024, testifying that he found drugs, he found a handgun, he found baby oil, and other individual items there during that raid. So to talk more on this and the very latest, we're going to bring in Jeremy Rosenthal, criminal defense attorney. Jeremy, always nice to see you on Live Now from Fox.
Good morning, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm doing well. So I want to get to this because yesterday, very explosive testimony with
a lot of Americans think those $6,400 checks were just a COVID thing, but they're totally wrong. This is
which can often be a little bit drier, but also really hammer the points home that the prosecution and the defense want to make. Let's start with the person on the stand right now, this clinical psychologist who is talking about trauma bonds, etc. What is the prosecution trying to point to when it comes to the charges against Sean Diddy Combs?
What they're trying to do with Dr. Hughes is they're trying to shore up a lot of loose ends, and they're trying to fortify Cassie Ventura's testimony through an expert witness. A lot of times when you're prosecuting, your case is only as strong as your weakest link, and your weakest link is going to be the human being, the vulnerable, fragile, oftentimes victimized human being who has to go on the witness stand and face cross-examination. They may not remember things. They may have motive or incentive to act a certain way. And what the prosecution will do is they'll call an expert often cases, and that person will fortify the testimony, explain, here's why this person might say this, here's why this person might say that. Dr. Hughes is what's called a blind expert, meaning she has intentionally not learned any of the facts of this case, which sort of also kind of walls her off from certain cross-examination things. But the weak points there are that she's going to be vulnerable to certain things that she has to assume by virtue of not really getting into the facts. But we do see this. This is a very common tactic prosecutors use to fortify what a victim is testifying about.
So, yeah, it's interesting because you were mentioning something very important, considering that she is giving blind testimony. So she doesn't know the details of the facts. And I think a lot of people wonder, okay, so when does the prosecution reach out to an expert saying, hey, look, we want you on a certain case. Don't read or don't, figure out any of the specific details. How does that work?
Well, they don't. It's sort of understood. They don't tell the expert not to do anything. They just don't provide them any information for that, and then that way the expert can go up there and just sort of opine. And it's a very sort of wash, rinse, repeat process. You see it in a lot of child abuse cases. You see it in a lot of domestic violence cases. And what this expert will do is they will, in some instances in state court, they will go literally from courtroom to courtroom, and they may testify 2 to 3 times per week, and it's a vulnerability if the defense can get there. If the defense can ask questions like, okay, so why didn't you look into this case? Why didn't you try to study that? Why didn't you try to interview Miss Ventura? Why didn't you try to interview her mom? Why didn't you even look at the police report? So there are some built-in vulnerabilities there when you are going to go into a case and be somewhat blind. The rules assume when you call an expert witness that you're going to be talking about more highbrow psychological principles. Also, what that means is that the defense can say, okay, doctor, you're not going to look at the facts of this case. That's fine. Well, would you agree with this study that happened in 1993 where the opposite experts concluded something different? That's what this debate sort of turns into. But again, the prosecution is winning to some degree, at least on the issue of fortifying Miss Ventura's testimony and supplementing it, because their case is only as strong as the weakest link, and the weakest link is almost always going to be the human being that is the victim that they're calling to try to strengthen a lot of those inherent vulnerabilities that a victim or a complainant is going to have.
And we have a live stream going, Jeremy, and a lot of people, again, are very interested in understanding, that human aspect. Cassie chose, they say, to stay with Sean Diddy Combs, the psychologist, talking about the trauma bond that makes them feel like they have no other
she was
option.
groomed at 19.
When it comes, though, and we were mentioning domestic violence, that is not a charge, that Sean Diddy Combs is facing. He's facing sex trafficking, a number of other ones. What does this particular expert testimony, what is that going to point towards for the prosecution to make their case? Because it's not about domestic violence. It's not about sexual assault. These are higher level, federal charges.
Ultimately, the prosecution is going to have to connect this to some broader things if they want to prove racketeering, if they want to prove some kind of conspiracy. And the micro moment of sort of what we're seeing is they're still not quite done with Miss Ventura. Obviously, they were concerned enough about Miss Ventura's testimony to try to call Dr. Hughes. If I'm the defense, I'm pointing out several things with this expert's testimony. What I'm saying is, listen, if we have a blind witness up here, she's sort of presuming guilt and not innocence. And you have to presume guilt because what she's testifying to is because Miss Ventura is a victim, therefore this, therefore she's a victim. So it is almost sort of circular logic. If you're the defense, you're really pointing to that saying, well, wait a minute here. You're saying she's the victim, and that's your first point. Shouldn't that be what this all leads up to? Another sort of blind spot with with these experts is that some of these thoughts and theories don't necessarily account for certain things such as drug abuse or mental health issues, and they also can sort of lack the understanding that sometimes, and as Diddy has done with his defense, these sort of things can be kind of mutual, right? That there can be this mutual disliking, but ultimately, to your point, Stephanie, I think you're correct. Ultimately, this has got to get somewhere bigger. It's got to get to some of these outward conspiracies and not be about Miss Ventura. Because if P. Diddy is guilty of domestic violence towards her, it doesn't prove these federal charges. Now, it gets the jury not to like him, and that's certainly part and parcel of an effective prosecution, whether we like that or not. But ultimately, you're correct, Stephanie. This has to get bigger, and we're going to have to see some witnesses that ultimately connect a few more dots than we're seeing here.
Yeah, I mean, as of now, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. We've been hearing from Cassie. I mean, just incredibly powerful, gripping, harrowing testimony. But again, what does that kind of point to? It certainly creates an emotion, I would imagine, in a juror and the jury. But, the prosecution, as you know, has to go well beyond that when proving their case. When you're taking a look at the testimony that we have heard thus far, where do you think the ball has fallen? Do you think that right now, the defense seems to have a stronger case, or the prosecution? Again, this is 8 weeks long. Anything could happen in those 8 weeks. But at this point in time, day 8 of testimony, what's your takeaway?
You're seeing everybody's strategy really start to take shape and develop. You're seeing the prosecution trying to lay the predicate that this man is an abuser, that these acts did occur, that there was sex abuse, that there was the transportation of people, that there was force, that there was intimidation. So you're starting to see sort of the groundwork form there from the prosecution and the government's standpoint. You're also sort of seeing from Diddy's standpoint sort of the divide and conquer defense of, well, okay, maybe we're a bad guy, maybe we did commit some of these things, but you've got to make this bigger. You've got to connect this at a larger level. Also, part of that is to sort of what you call in criminal court kissing the ugly baby or throwing the skunk on the table. That would be for Diddy and his team to kind of marry up to some of the bad facts. Okay, fine, maybe he is abusive. Okay, fine, maybe he wasn't very pleasant. Okay, fine, we're guilty of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but we're not guilty of some of these more fabulous things that you're sort of alleging. So you are sort of seeing a lot of those, both of those theories really starting to congeal and to take shape. And I think you're just going to see more of that as this case goes on.
I just want to touch upon before we let you go, because I know that you have a very busy schedule. Everyone really kind of, I would imagine hoping to hear from Kid Cudi on the stand today. We were hearing from prosecutors that he's not going to appear any earlier than tomorrow. But obviously, he has a very key part in this. He had a relationship with Cassie. Prosecution is saying that, Combs was so upset by this relationship that he, said that he was going to firebomb Kid Cudi's vehicle. We hear that that's going to point to arson, but how key is that testimony going to be?
It's going to be key if it starts to sort of spider out into some of these broader conspiracy type things. And remember, when you're charging somebody with racketeering, they've got to agree to a criminal enterprise that is bigger than just themselves. That enterprise doesn't have to be P. Diddy's organization. It doesn't have to be necessarily a formal company or something like that. It can just be a handful of people who are engaging in moving people from one place to another, who are engaging in this type of intimidation. So when I'm watching that testimony, that's going to be what I'm looking for. Is this starting to spider out beyond not just Cassie Ventura, not just beyond her, but beyond some of the other people that are helping Diddy? Because it's not going to be the people that are victimized here that create this racketeering and create this conspiracy. It's going to be the people that are helping Diddy. That's what the conspiracy is. That's what the racketeering is. That's what makes these cases federal.
Yeah, and you kind of answer another question that a lot of people are wondering, Jeremy. This RICO, right? This is what we're continuing to hear about the racketeering, and it has to do with an organization. It can't just be one individual. However, Diddy, I believe was the only person named in this. So when you're talking about broadening it out, how does that work if he's the only one right now charged with that particular count?
The other co-conspirators don't have to be. They don't have to be indicted. They don't even have to be a co-conspirator, so to speak. They don't even have to be legally identified. It just has to be shown that you were a part of a broader group of people that were engaging in this organization or organized a line of thinking, if you will. So those people could be government witnesses, or they could just be shown that, look, there was somebody else that was out there that was with you. If you're prosecuting somebody for robbing a bank and there's 3 or 4 people with you that are on video, we don't know who they are. We know that can be a conspiracy, right? We can see that, and the jury can infer that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody indicted, but they do have to point at some point to other people who are out there.
You want to know the biggest secret to starting a business that no one talks about? How much legal stuff you need to deal with to get your business running.
Sort of intimidating those people too, but it's got to be just more than him.
So interesting, and thank you for kind of laying that out, because I think, most of us are not legal experts, unlike yourself, and sometimes this is high level and we don't really understand exactly, what the thought process or what the procedure is. So, so many twists and turns, and obviously we're just at the very beginning of this, but is there anything in particular, Jeremy, that has really stood out or stuck with you as we continue to hear from these witnesses and continue to, see the sketches and, all of the twists and turns?
So far, the government has made a really, really concerted effort to show how abusive and unlikable P. Diddy is. That's a chunk of what they've got to do in this case. It's a chunk of what they have to prove, but it's not everything. So that part of it, I don't know that I would call that surprising, but they have certainly made a concerted effort. And I wouldn't necessarily expect to see somebody like Dr. Hughes come and testify, a blind witness, to try to really come and drive these things home. It's sort of killing a fly with an atom bomb, if you will. But that's what the government does, and this is a high-profile case for them. They certainly don't want to. They certainly don't want to blow it, and they certainly don't want to lose it. But anytime you're going to throw a blind witness on the stand again, you're going to be vulnerable in certain ways. Just a lot of the things that we've already covered. But just to, if there's anything out here that is really just sort of sticking out so far, it's that they are really, really, really hammering on P. Diddy, the individual. And I think that's going to be a broader part of what they ultimately do when they sort of say, and here's all the tentacles that Diddy has. And this is why it's racketeering. This is why it's trafficking. It's why it's all these greater things.
Yeah, maybe the alleged mastermind of sorts. Jeremy, as always, we appreciate you taking the time to join us on Live Now from Fox. My gosh, day 8, but we're potentially a week 8, into it. So no doubt we're going to speak with you again.
Thank you, Stephanie.
We're taking another live look right here at the skyline. And, we did want to also share this live update from Fox 5 New York right here. This is a social media post saying Kid Cudi is expected to testify at the trial, taking the witness stand to tell the jury about his brief relationship 14 years ago with Combs's ex-girlfriend, Cassie. So that really is the testimony that we are really interested in hearing about. And we are going to be putting up a side panel of sorts just to give you the very latest and greatest. But as we continue to follow this, I did want to just give you a brief recap if you're just joining us at this hour, because testimony did resume around 9 a.m. This was a continuation of a witness that was on the stand yesterday. This is a witness of HSI Special Agent Jared Gannon. And so he resumed his testimony this morning, talking about helping plan the raid on Sean Diddy Combs' home in 2024, and then also talking about, this was yesterday, testifying about the items they seized. So the jury did find a number of items, and we're just going to bring up that side panel for you as we continue our live coverage right here, if you just bear with me. But I did want to share that very latest as we continue our live coverage right here. So we are going to bring that up for you as we continue that live coverage. What we're going to do, though, is we are going to give you the very latest. And as we work on this, we're just going to pause for a moment on this live look right here. We're going to be pulling up some of the very latest information in just a moment. Want to question him because they contend Combs was so upset. Just step away quickly. I do want to do a microphone check with him, and then we'll just bring him on live to kind of disseminate a little bit more of what is happening right now.
I'm good. How are you?
Sorry.
Whenever you're ready, I'm ready.
Can y'all please come in hitting the like button? Please. Can y'all hear me? Yesterday I had a malfunction and didn't realize it. Can y'all hear me? Can y'all give me a 1 or a thumbs up?
On the left-hand side of your screen, the latest information on this case is Dr. Dawn Hughes continues to testify. At the moment, she is a clinical psychologist talking about trauma bonds, talking about the dynamic between a victim and an abuser and what that all entails. Also, you may have heard that rapper Kid Cudi is expected to testify. Now, there was a question as to whether he could testify today. However, prosecutors have indicated that he will be testifying no earlier than tomorrow about his relationship with Cassie. Prosecutors want to question him because they contend Combs was so upset by this relationship, he arranged to have Kid Cudi's convertible firebombed. And so to talk more about the people on the stand and, you know, where all of this goes, I do want to bring in criminal defense attorney Michael Gottlieb. Michael, we appreciate you joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So, you know, I want to start with the very first witness who was called to the stand today. This was someone who started testifying yesterday. This is one of the HSI special agents that, you know, kind of spearheaded the raid of Sean Diddy Combs' Star Island mansion back in 2024. He was detailing, you know, items that he found, handguns, you know, AK-50, you know, just rifles as well, with some of the file numbers filed off, shoes, drugs.
Crime.
What is, you know, I guess the question I have is, what's the point? Where is this leading? You know, what is the significance of what they found inside the house? Because you have to wonder, why are they bringing up like 10 pairs of platform shoes?
So they can't be linked to a body?
Well, so I think it's a great question, because I think what it does is it all dovetails into the allegations, which are RICO and the sex trafficking, as well as we're talking, you know, a criminal case, bringing a criminal case, it's inference
plus tax evasion.
And what it does is the government is building on those. And with the testimony of the psychologists today, you're going to want to show that, you know, when somebody's in love with somebody, they tend to do something. When somebody's afraid of somebody, they intend to do what that person wants even more. So we're talking about these freakouts. So we have we know we have a love affair going on that went on for, you know, close to 20 years. We have these freakouts. We've heard about pools filled with oil,
so on and so forth. And now we heard that people had to wear costumes. So we're seeing some of the costuming and we're seeing the guns. So I think all of this goes to prove every count that there is, including the RICO count, including that other people had to help Diddy pull this off. So I think it's very poignant evidence in this case.
So, and you were talking about that, Sean Diddy Combs couldn't have done this all himself, that he had to have, additional help, additional agents, if you will, for him to carry that out, kind of pointing to the organization, that you have to have for that racketeering charge. When it comes to laying out the evidence, is it more effective? And I'm just kind of curious about the strategy, because sometimes it might take a while for the jury to kind of string these pieces of evidence together, and they may be wondering, why this, and then the next day, why that, but then it all adds up. Is that a more effective strategy, just providing a little bit of evidence each and every day versus kind of these like shocking moments? Is that a strategy that they're looking at?
Yeah, I think obviously you want to keep the jury informed. When I try a case, you want to keep them informed. You want to keep them entertained. But let's understand, this is a federal criminal trial. The judge has reined them in a little bit in terms of, when the evidence will be presented, how long a cross-examination will be. But it's like a puzzle or building a building, okay? You're going to do it one level at a time, one layer at a time. So it's really important to do inference upon inference. The government has a 96% conviction rate. They're very likely to get a conviction in this case, and they're going to continue entertaining the jury. It's very sexually prurient allegations. The jury wants to hear this kind of stuff, and not every day in trial can be that exciting. So it's just a matter of building piece by piece by piece by piece until you get a complete picture of all the criminal wrongdoing that's going on here.
All right, and we did want to just let our viewers know, we just got this in. The court it has now recessed for lunch, so the cross-examination of the psychologist, Don Hughes, is going to resume after that lunch break. We were talking about kind of, the reason why Dr. Hughes is on the stand. And what was interesting to note, and we talked a little bit about this, is this is kind of like blind testimony in that, she doesn't know the nuances, and that's part of a strategy for the prosecution. When it comes to the cross-examining of this type of witness, though, what kind of line of questioning do you think that the defense will take with her to try and poke holes in what she's talked about in terms of, the dynamic between a victim and an abuser, the sense of hopelessness, the sense that they really can't break the cycle, that they're beholden to that person that they love?
You don't know how to get out.
The weakness in any testimony, such as a witness as this doctor, is that the doctor hasn't performed an examination on any of the people who have testified. So the doctor, as you said, is sort of testifying in the blind or in a vacuum.
I agree. And it ain't like it's just one little mistake.
Whether or not they suffer from any disorder the doctor may be discussing. So that's your cross-examination, is you didn't evaluate them. You can't say that this relates to the alleged victims in this case. You can't say it relates to the alleged witnesses in this case. You can't tell us what kind of pressure they were under, whether it was monetary, whether it was psychological, whether it was physical pressure. You're talking about studies of individuals, yet you haven't studied any of these individuals to know that what you're saying is about them. That's what you should expect on cross-examination.
So I know this is strategic on the part of the prosecution, but what is the advantage to bringing someone on as an expert who has not really met the some of these key witnesses and gotten to know them? What's the advantage to that?
Well, I think it's a necessary move that the prosecution has to do in this case, because when you have a relationship that exists from, I think it's 20 years before, but it might have only been 6. But when you have a relationship that exists for a long period of time, and you're having people perform acts that seem consensual, you want to be able to show, why would that act have been considered? Why would somebody do that? And so the doctor's talking in generalities, and then you can sort of fit that generality into the testimony that you heard. Like, yeah, now I get why she would engage in those freakouts. Now I understand why she wouldn't tell her family about it. Now I understand,
all those facts and circumstances that are the inferences building upon one another, leading to a conviction in this case. I buy it, I get it, I understand it, and the doctor, it's kind of like a paint by colors picture. The doctor's filling in the color that the other participants in the trial laid out there.
Michael, we know that we are expecting to hear from Kid Cudi, but we don't have all of the witnesses. We don't have a comprehensive list. It's not like, this was published and we're anticipating, X, Y, and Z. But from your expert perspective, is there a particular witness that you are very much interested in hearing from, whether that be from the FBI or someone who raided or someone in connection with the bad boy empire? When it comes to, focusing on this case, who are you most interested in hearing from?
Well, I think in order for the government to really hammer home their case, it's going to have to be somebody from within the structure, within the empire, who says, yes, this did happen. These people were reluctant. These people were told, come in here, engage in these bizarre sexual acts. Don't look at Diddy. Yes, we had to fill a plastic pool with oil. Yes, we had to do all these things. We had to carry suitcases filled with toys from New York to the Bahamas to Miami to wherever they were going. I think when you do that, it's much easier to see the first count, which is a RICO count. It's easier to see the corrupt organization, because that's probably the hardest count to really wrap your head around. The others you can get from the victimization testimony. But I would want somebody from within the organization to sort of tie it all together for me.
Michael, is there anything else that, you're really interested in, hearing or kind of just observing? We saw it last week, Sean Diddy Combs' family, showing up in full force. We saw his mother, we saw his children, we saw, other individuals. Now, not so much. And obviously there is a reason for that. Sean Diddy Combs doing the heart, and all the viewers could see that. As you mentioned, a lot of this is performance based. I mean, this is played out in front of the jury to, try and get a win from either side. When it comes to these sorts of tactics and strategies, what have you found to be the most effective? And also on that note, I'm sure that sometimes these strategies backfire.
Well, I think with any defendant, it's really important to have family in the courtroom, especially somebody like Diddy. We don't necessarily see them entertainers, stars, as human beings, because we put them on a different pedestal. I think it's important to have your family there every single day, because if you see that there's somebody in the courtroom who loves the defendant, and that's what he is, the defendant, and they love him, then he's a human being. He's not just a number. He's not just a case. He's not just an entertainer. He's a tangible, lovable human being who is subject to the frailties that we all are, which is we make mistakes. And maybe he was in a loving relationship and made a mistake and isn't the monster that the government's trying to portray. So I would have my family there every single day, en masse, so that the jury sees them. It's also a harder decision to look people in the eye and say your loved one is guilty. So I do think it's very performative, and I would have them there every day if I could.
On that point, though, Michael, a lot of the family members inside that courtroom were his children. And I can't imagine that it's easy to hear these allegations against your father. Could that backfire when the jury sees that his children are listening to this, that they're seeing some of these videos and some of these photos? Could that backfire?
So the answer to that's yes. I mean, unfortunately, everything we do in court is a double-edged sword. Every piece of evidence can be cross-examined. Every testimony can be cross-examined. At the same point in time, your children kind of love you unconditionally, but it may also temper somebody's testimony. Maybe somebody's not going to say as harshly what they would have said about Diddy with his children in the courtroom. I think it has an impact on the jurors, on the people testifying, potentially on the judge. It's beneficial, but it can also be harmful. And yes, of course, it can backfire.
All right, Michael, it's just so interesting. And I do want to just get your hot take, not to put you in the seat right here. We're only in day 8 of testimony, but from what you have seen and heard so far, Do you think that he
I'm
is
sure
going to
Jesus
be found
Christ would have
guilty on
agreed with me.
at least one of these counts, or do you think, from what you're hearing so far, that he might walk free?
Oh, Jesus said we all got to pay for our sins.
I think that he's not a very likable person.
That's why
to
he
begin
came to
with
die
in
for
terms
him.
of his name, his reputation. Obviously,
That's what Jesus Christ did. But hold on now. Come on now.
Well.
I mean, we can't put Jesus Christ in there like that, Leo. We can't do that, baby, because he came and died for the remission of all sins. The one we think are just God awful, and the one that we accept as little white lies. He came to die for the remission of sin, right? So we can't pick and choose like that. And I say that respectfully because he said he came, there is no condemnation. He said he came to save the world, not condemn the world. And your statement has a slight condemnation. Now, I'm not saying that mine don't either, but I wouldn't come in here. Oh, that's not what you mean when you said I'm sure Jesus Christ would have agreed with me. And what you said is everybody knows what's right and what's wrong. And if they choose to do wrong, they deserve the time. Yeah, I mean, we all will have to pay for our sins. You know, we all have a sin seed. There is nobody that's perfect on earth. Okay. No, okay. That hurt. Okay. Yeah, it's just kind of how it read to me, you know. And I can't condemn them, but I can have an opinion about them. And I can have an opinion because the word also says that you know the tree by the fruit that it bears. So can I judge the tree? Yes, I can judge that tree to know if I want some fruit off that tree. I can look at that tree and say, that fruit look rotten. That one is a good one right there, but everything else that's growing off that tree is rotten. And I can make a judgment. That's what it says. You can judge the tree. You can know the fruit by the tree. I mean, you can know the tree by the fruit that it bears. Okay? Oh, I know. That's what I don't want to sin no more. Oh no, that's why I don't want to sin no more. You mean sin, S-I-N? Okay. I just want to be clear, because we are all, have an opinion.
I think that having tried federal cases, having won federal cases, having lost federal cases, I know that they have a 95+ rate of obtaining a conviction. So my money is on the federal government to get a conviction on at least, I don't know about the RICO count, because again, that's a little bit harder, but on the other counts where there has been phenomenal testimony about what people were made to do, I would absolutely think he's going to get convicted on at least one or two of them.
Wow, so 95%. I mean, I have to imagine, Michael, that the federal government is not going to take up a case that they don't feel like they can win. It doesn't look good on their end.
Oh, yeah, I definitely
but that
see
is
RICO.
stunning. I mean, we're going to just have to see how it plays out, but that statistic is certainly eye-opening.
It ain't no different than the RICO with R. Kelly.
Looking ahead, we appreciate you taking the time, joining us here. I mean, this is just absolutely fascinating, and no doubt we're going to have you on again to talk more about it.
Would love it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I did want to just share this live look once again with our viewers right here as we continue to follow the very latest information. And we also invite you to take part in our live stream right here. In fact, I'm just going to go take a quick look at it because, we have asked you if you have any questions, don't hesitate. I mean, this is what we're here for. If you have questions about, the nuances about the eyewitness testimony, legal questions, definitely, put that in the chat. We're going to try and get to them as we can. I mean, so many of you are chiming in, and believe me, we appreciate that. So if I miss something, not intentional, I'm trying to scroll through this, as I am talking. So you know what? I do see Racing Kiddo 2. You said, when will the defense have direct examination? We're going to be speaking throughout the day with more attorneys. So don't you worry. I'm going to copy and paste this, Racing Kiddo 2. I'm putting this on my list of questions that we're going to get to. So thank you for, participating right here. We're going to continue to take a
After my car wreck, there was a lot I
Hold
didn't
on,
know.
y'all hit the
I
like
do know.
button.
We can help you understand all of your legal rights.
live now from Fox on that screen, and we have that. What kind of questions do you have? And we're going to get to all of those as soon as we can. And talking about that, coming up in just about 20 minutes, we are going to actually have an inside look, so to speak, of what is going on inside the courtroom. We're going to be speaking with Associated Press reporter Larry Neumeister. He has been inside the courtroom this entire time. And he has the eyes and the ears, so he can really not just shed light on the testimony, just after from lunch. Now, there was really explosive testimony. Casey explained that she does not have personal knowledge of this case. She hasn't reviewed evidence or assessed anyone involved. So what that means today, it's blind testimony. And we were hearing from Michael Gottlieb, we were hearing from Jeremy Rosenthal, talking about the strategy on this, because, for someone who has not look at this. This is from the sketch art. She only testified for about 15 minutes and was not cross-examined, but she testified that Cassie reached out to her worried that Sean Diddy Combs was going to release 2 sex tapes and demanded $20,000.
That's my desire, Leo.
This
That's
was
my desire.
when they were on break, and Sean Diddy Combs, she testified, was very upset that she was dating Kid Cudi, and that's why he wanted that money. He wanted to recoup the costs of what he had spent on her.
But he could have a whole
Cassie's
heirloom
mom
of
says
women.
that she then wired the money to Bad Boy Enterprises, but then about 4 to 5 days later, that money was returned. She also said she has no record of that trans.
If that wasn't a setup, baby, that right there. Yeah. Did y'all hear that? She sent that 20K to where? Did y'all hear that with y'all go there? To Bad Boy Enterprises. So there is an enterprise. That's that taking down the devil's empire. Oh yes. She said that, and somebody said, oh shit, no, you can send that back. Don't deposit that. So it was sent back. But she wired it to who? To the enterprise that was extorting her. Who was sent an email, another paper trail, to threaten, what is it called? What's that, revenge porn, which is federal. Revenge porn. Okay, then that watch this said you should leave 30 minutes before. Oh, he sure did, baby. He was hot. Ooh, he wanted to cuss P. Diddy out, baby.
Action. So this is video of the male escort known as the Punisher out inside. This is reporting the old-fashioned way, and so it's just really interesting to see, and hear from people who are actually inside the court. We see these sketches, but they don't really tell us the entire story, just a snapshot, if you will. So just absolutely fascinating from this. We've also been seeing some video as well and photos from the evidence right here. But, you know, I did want to share at least a couple of sketches that we have from, you know, the previous testimony. And take a look at this. This is from the sketch artist Jane Rosenberg right here. You can see Sean Diddy Combs on the lower left-hand side of your screen. I think what has jumped out to so many people is the difference in hair color, and you know, now it's white. His goatee is white. This is video of Cassie Ventura's mother taking the stand right there. That is the male escort known as the Punisher, who spoke at length yesterday about the freak-offs that he says that he was involved with Cassie and with Sean Diddy Combs. Part of that testimony that we heard from the male escort yesterday was at no point did he feel that it was not consensual. He said he did at no point feel there was any discomfort from Cassie. Otherwise, he said that he would have immediately stopped doing what he did. And so there was really explosive testimony yesterday. Today, we are hearing, at least at this point, from experts. We're hearing from the special agent who raided the house. We're hearing from a clinical psychologist yesterday, more of that personal, powerful testimony. Also, there's a sketch of Sean Diddy Combs kind of hunched over, clutching himself. And that was because the temperature, that you see it right there, apparently the temperatures were so cold inside that courtroom that he was just trying to get warm. And that is a photo of his sketch, I should say, of his former personal assistant, who also testified yesterday as well. So we're really just in the very beginning hours of this, but I did want to share that with you. This is some video of Cassie Ventura's parents leaving the court right there, arm in arm. And we were hearing from Cassie's mom yesterday on the stand. She only testified for about 15 minutes and was not cross-examined, but she testified that Cassie reached out to her, worried that Sean Diddy Combs was going to release 2 sex tapes, and demanded $20,000 really in restitution. This was when they were on break, and Sean Diddy Combs, she testified, was very upset that she was dating Kid Cudi, and that's why he wanted that money. He wanted to recoup the costs of what he had spent on her. Cassie's mom says that she then wired the money to Bad Boy Enterprises, but then about 4 to 5 days later, that money was returned. She also said she has no record of that transaction. So this is video of the male escort known as the Punisher walking out after court. He testified for quite a length of time, more than 1 hour, detailing in length the freak-off situations that he engaged in, stating that this lasted for months until he was no longer asked to join Cassie and Sean Diddy Combs. He said in the very beginning, Sean Diddy Combs, he didn't know who they were, and Sean Diddy Combs, covered his face initially during these freak-offs, and then finally felt comfortable enough to wear a baseball cap. But perhaps some of that crucial testimony is that he did say that at no point did he feel that there was, any sort of discomfort on Cassie's part right here. Experts, though, say that the testimony from Cassie Ventura's mother, Regina Ventura, could be very damaging because it talks about money being exchanged and Diddy allegedly threatening to release sex tapes unless he received that $20,000. So that is according to her. You can see her walking down the street right there, arm in arm with her husband. So right now on the stand is Dr. Don Hughes, who is a clinical psychologist. I'm just going to refresh all the latest information right here because I want to give that to you. We do get minute by minute updates right here, so bear with me. Okay, so it does say that Sean Diddy Combs' defense attorney has spoken. It says that he spoke outside of court. Now, unfortunately, we've been combing our live looks right here. We don't have a live look outside of court, so it's unclear as to when he may have made those comments, if they were even captured on a camera right here. And we're taking a look. We don't have a live look. Otherwise, of course, we would bring you one. And as soon as we get one back, of course, we're going to show that to you. But this is what he spoke with. He actually spoke with Fox News' C.V. Cotton earlier this morning outside court, saying, quote, "It's a long trial and we're just getting started, and we have a lot of witnesses to go. We have a lot of weeks to go, and as the summer gets hotter, I'm sure so will the trial." So we are expecting up to 8 weeks of testimony. We are in day 8, so we have just barely begun. We are going to be covering all of it right here on our streaming YouTube page every day that there is testimony. So we invite you to stay with us as we continue our coverage right here. I am going to just leave you for a moment with the very latest information. I'm going to be updating it as the minutes go on with the very latest information, as you are taking a live look right here at the skyline of downtown New York City. That testimony with Dr. Don Hughes continuing at this hour.
Relationship. A lot of people have trouble breaking up, and they may stay in a relationship for 6 years where they seem to get along well enough but have a lot of problems, and there's no violence and no trauma. And she was saying, when people have so much trouble getting out of a relationship when everything goes well, else too. And when the agent was testifying about the raid on Combs' Star Island residence in Florida, they were paying close attention. They were looking right at him, and he showed them pieces of evidence. He showed them a gun. He showed them bullets. He showed them various...
the control and the power.
I'm trying to catch it at the beginning of it. Hold on. I'll be trying to catch it at the beginning.
So,
disassociate while she was engaged in some of those freak-offs right here. All right, so we are noticing Larry Neumeister with the Associated Press has now stepped outside. What we're going to do is we just want to make sure that everything is working right here on his end, and it looks like we might be having some issues connecting. So what we're going to do is we're going to just hang on this live look right here. You can see that it's raining, so we want to get Larry so he can get back inside. We'll be with him in just a moment.
Hello to everybody who's come in that I didn't get a chance to speak to.
yes, I can. Thanks. Okay, that's fine.
All right, so we do want to head straight to Larry Neumeister, a reporter with the Associated Press right there. Larry, thank you for joining us as we take a live look at the skyline of New York City. It is dreary and pretty much awful day right there with the rain. So thank you for braving the elements for us, stepping outside. Give us the layout of the land as we're currently hearing from the clinical psychologist. Before we get to the testimony, share with us the demeanor, the mood of Sean Diddy Combs. And did any of his family members show up? That's a question that we've been getting from our viewers.
Not many today. No, it's a pretty empty row of people that normally are from his family. Although, as one court officer told me at one point, he's like, a lot of people were saying they're with his family. But it turns out that it's a quieter day in the courtroom to begin with. So it would explain why there'd be fewer people attending overall. But there's still plenty of attention being paid. And certainly when the psychologist spoke, I saw jurors taking a lot of notes. And this is a psychologist who wasn't privy to any of the facts of the case. She hasn't spoken to Combs or Cassie or any of the witnesses and admitted that she knew very little about the case. She's just talking about general psychology type things.
So, given that you were noticing that the jury was taking a lot of notes, do you feel like they were really connecting with what she was talking about in terms of trauma bonding, in terms of the control and the power and kind of the dynamic, if you will, between, maybe an abuser and a victim?
Well, as I looked at the jurors, there's a lot of middle-aged and some older people on the jury, and I was thinking to myself, probably a lot of them have suffered their own traumas and were kind of fascinated by hearing from a professional, as well as how it relates to all the evidence they've heard of so much trauma from Cassie and the other witnesses describing what they had witnessed, the violence they had witnessed. I'm sure jurors kind of appreciated hearing a professional give their depiction of it. Of course, this was a professional who's hired by the prosecutors for $6,000 today. So, it's someone who's there to sort of support the prosecution's case.
Right, you got to take it maybe with a little bit of grain of salt, since she is getting a paycheck from the prosecution. What I think is interesting, and you mentioned this, is that this is blind testimony. She never personally spoke with Cassie. And you talked about generalities and how a lot of people probably have gone through their own sorts of trauma, able to, use what she has said in her expert testimony and apply it to their own lives. And sometimes that can be very powerful when it creates that level of understanding and insight, saying, you know what, I too, can understand where all of this is coming from. We first we're hearing from this special agent, sharing all of these pictures about what they saw. What was the reaction from the jury then? I know this was kind of they were finishing up the testimony. Did they seem bored? Did they seem interested?
Well, that's an interesting thing about this jury, is that they have paid close attention to everything throughout. They've been very attentive, taking lots of notes with the psychologist, but with everyone else too. And when the agent was testifying about the raid on Combs' Star Island residence in Florida, they were paying close attention. They were looking right at him, and he showed them pieces of evidence. He showed them a gun. He showed them bullets. He showed them various things that had been found in Combs' home. And, they paid a lot of attention. And there was a moment, it actually occurred yesterday in the afternoon, and I haven't spoken to you since, but there was a moment where Combs actually kind of put his hands up to his covering his eyes at a moment, and seemed slightly distressed when they were showing things like the way they used a armored vehicle to ram through the gate to even enter his residence. And so that was kind of fascinating, because he has shown almost no emotion. If I did an imitation of Combs in court, it would be like this. It would be, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating.
Talks to his lawyers. He's looking around.
No remorse.
But he He's
No
he's
empathy.
not muttering things. He's not showing any anger. He's not showing really much emotion at all. You see him writing notes to his lawyers. He'll occasionally speak to his lawyers. During a break, he may turn around and, make a gesture toward family or something. But overall, he's been a pretty docile witness. Not witness, I'm sorry, defendant. And, one thing about the psychologist this morning that kind of fascinated me was she made the point that most people have trouble getting out of any relationships. And even when everything's going great in a relationship,
Right, that's true.
a lot of people have trouble breaking up. And they may stay in a relationship for 6 years where they seem to get along well enough but have a lot of problems. And there's no violence and no trauma. And she was saying when people have so much trouble getting out of a relationship when everything goes well, you can imagine how difficult it is when there are other factors like trauma and violence they've been subjected to and things like that.
That is just incredible insight, what we're hearing from her. And it's definitely a different angle, right? We're hearing from, maybe these special agents about what they saw. This is definitely a different perspective for the juror right there. Larry, there was a lot of talk about perhaps Kid Cudi was going to testify today. We know that that's not going to be the case. We'll just have to wait, perhaps another day for that to happen.
Oh,
anyone else that you know of who is going to take
Maybe
the
that was
witness stand
yesterday.
after Dr. Hughes?
Actually, right before the break, they just took a very half-hour lunch break. Right before that happened, they brought in a witness. He's going to be the next witness, I believe, George Kaplan. He's a former, someone who worked for Combs. And he came in and they asked him, they said, are you planning to take the fifth? And the right to not to answer questions. It's everyone's right not to incriminate themselves. And he said yes. And at that point, the judge approved immunity for him so that he can testify about any crimes that he was involved in.
Y'all hear that?
Without facing prosecution.
The judge is granting instant immunity right there. So nothing that you say will be used against you. Oh, his ass is in trouble, trouble. Diddy's ass is in trouble, trouble. Let's finish listening. What?
Prosecution of himself. So he will be testifying. We don't know exactly what he might be testifying about, what crimes he could have been involved in. But even in this search of Combs' residence, the agent testified this morning, cocaine was found there, lots of drugs. Certainly any of the employees who were involved in any way with the drugs and such might want immunity if they're going to testify. So, but I don't know anything about exactly what he's going to say he did wrong and the reason that he originally wanted to plead the fifth.
I mean, that's going to be fascinating as well, because I have to imagine that this might point to racketeering and in terms of, how other individuals are involved. So George Kaplan, who used to work for Sean Diddy Combs, is set to testify. You were mentioning he was granted immunity just now because he said he was going to plead the fifth. So definitely fascinating. Also, just to give our viewers a timeline, I mean, I know that, court wrapped up at around 4 p.m. yesterday Eastern time. Do you anticipate kind of that same timeline today? Or do you think it could run longer, maybe shorter?
Well, yes, the judge has said he plans to stop. The first week he went until 5 every day. And he told them ahead of time, we're going 9:30 to 5. But he said the rest of the trial, we are going to be finishing each day at 3 o'clock. We're going to start at 9 in the morning. And he gives them a shorter little lunch break. And there are fewer breaks, but he goes straight forward to 3. And he said that if it turns out they're getting behind on witnesses, he may start stretching it to 3:30 or 4. But then one of the defense lawyers said, well, if you plan to do that, please let us know in advance. Don't spring it on us that day. So it looks like court will be ending at 3 o'clock each day.
Okay. I don't want to keep you too long, Larry, but I do want to let our viewers know that you will be joining us after court wraps up today to give us another recap and a look ahead towards tomorrow. Thank you so much. I know it is rainy. It is not the best of weather, so we appreciate you braving the elements, and we will absolutely talk to you in just a few hours once court wraps up.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Larry. And this is a live look right here. And you can see the elements that Larry has been braving right here. You actually saw right behind him a lot of folks' boots. And inside one of the boots, Gannon claimed they found 3 different cell phones. Also, they found a Gucci bag that he claims they found a variety of pills inside, as well phones. Also, they found a Gucci bag that he claims they found a variety of pills inside, as well as the courthouse, as we saw a couple of people file in. Larry was sharing that really not many family members are attending this week, unlike last week. Who knows if, weather could have played a factor in that. But we're going to be checking in with him in just a little bit. As soon as we get another live look, and we do anticipate getting another live look from outside the courthouse, once, we're getting closer to that period of them wrapping up, because we want to see if there's anyone, leaving the courthouse, if there's any reaction. In fact, our camera that we had yesterday, we shared with you right here on air, we saw the male escort known as the Punisher leaving and getting into a car with tinted windows. And I was talking on air at the time. I said, well, obviously this has someone to do with the, with the case, is all of the photographers were filming this. And then, yes, it turned out to be the Punisher right there. So you never know who's leaving court. You never know if they're going to say anything. And we'll definitely be getting that to you as soon as we get that other live look. I'm refreshing all of the information right here. And I'm taking a look at it right now, the very latest information. And Larry was the one who brought this to us, is that Sean Diddy Combs' former employee, George Kaplan, invoked his Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate himself. So he took the stand right before the lunch break, explaining that he was there because of a subpoena. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been there. And he said yes when asked if he planned to invoke his Fifth Amendment right. The prosecution telling Kaplan that if he is granted immunity, he will be forced to answer questions. And he says that he understood that. So the immunity order was then presented to Kaplan's attorney for review. The judge signed the immunity, and it was entered into the record. So we are expecting his former employee to testify. It's going to be very interesting to see, because obviously he said that he didn't want to talk, but now that he has immunity, he's protected, he is going to be sharing
hold on, let's shift
his
gears.
truth.
Oh
so
boy,
also on the stand as well was Dr. Don Hughes, a clinical psychologist who testified on behalf of the government. Larry was mentioning she is being paid $6,000 by the federal government to be a witness. So you got to.
We're shifting gears. Where is it? Come on.
The other side will have an opportunity to bring their own expert in to testify, and that person will also be cross-examined.
Come on, y'all. Get the lights up.
I think, if anything, it's kind of what Joe was saying earlier, that ultimately the defense has to throw some things at the wall. This as a
cover all bases.
And talk about what's.
Okay, we're shifting gears.
Miami home, and that's the home on Two-Star Island, So they didn't talk about the LA homes or
Live report from the courtroom. Y'all get the likes up.
By the way, as you're watching this Diddy trial, I think it's... Hey everybody, welcome to our live lunchtime show on Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber as we cover the Sean Combs criminal trial. As I said, they're currently in a lunch break, which gives us an hour to really dissect what has happened today and so far in this case. We're going to be taking your questions on YouTube, so submit them if you have questions about today's testimony, about what's been happening in the case, what you expect is going to happen. We talk about how Kid Cudi planning to testify this week. That's going to be pretty big. Submit them. We'll talk about it. And also, as soon as they go back live in court, since there are no cameras, we're going to give you real-time updates about what's happening and break it down in real time. But before I get into all of that, I want to bring on right now Law and Crimes reporter Elizabeth.
Can y'all still hear? Give me a 1 if y'all can hear.
We have limited time with Elizabeth. I know she has to jump right back in there. Elizabeth, good to see you. Talk to us about the day, how it started with the continuation of the testimony of this special agent.
Can y'all hear? Give me a 1 or a thumbs up. Let me know y'all can hear. Am I buffing? Okay. I see you, Starlight. Starlights, let's go.
From Homeland Security that was part of the raids that were conducted on Sean Combs' property, and what evidence was found, or potential evidence. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, this testimony is something I myself have been very interested in. And this is no offense to all the witnesses that have been testifying, but I really just wanted to see the physical evidence and see especially what was found in those raids. And so Homeland Security Investigation Special Agent Jared Gammon, he took the stand actually yesterday afternoon. And he at first kind of started going over some of the exhibits, especially what was found in the Miami home. And that's the home on Two-Star Island, excuse me. So they didn't talk about the LA homes or anything like that as far as what was found in that particular home. Really, we're just focusing on the Miami estate, essentially, because it's a huge property. And so we found out yesterday that 80 to 90 officers were involved in this search, and a lot of the stuff from today was a little just kind of continuation about everything that was found. So we saw a lot of exhibit photos, and I took, Jesse, a lot of notes, because at this point it was just so many exhibits back to back to back to back that you just were so overwhelmed by everything that was found, essentially. And so we learned yesterday that there were AR-15s inside the Miami property with the scratched off serial numbers. We saw that there were platform high heels that were 7 inches tall inside this Miami home. There were sex items inside this home found in the primary bedroom closet. There were then we got a close up of the red high heels and the sex toys, and then these high heels were actually displayed in front of the jury. So Special Agent Gannon, he just took up the heels, kind of showed them to the judge's box, and then kind of had it with the rest of the evidence. And so they said more than a dozen high heels were actually seized from this property. Then we saw some shoes, we saw some boots in the primary closet.
All the same
and these
size?
were special boots. They were Balenciaga boots that I myself.
A high-yield money market account offering great rates with unlimited access to your money. Now that's helpful.
were 3 cell phones. Diddy didn't have much reaction during this testimony, but it was interesting that these cell phones were found in these Balenciaga boots that were inside the closet. And so we also saw a black Gucci bag that was also found inside the closet. And inside that Gucci bag was pills, a powder substance. There was also eye drops in the bag. And so, you know, that Dr. Seuss kind of story, red fish, blue fish, all that stuff, that was essentially kind of the same thing with pills. And I'm not making light of the situation. There were pink pills, there were white pills, there were yellow pills, there were black pills, there were blue pills, there was a crystallized substance. So inside the Gucci bag, some of the residue found inside actually tested positive for cocaine and ketamine. And then they saw a black straw that was also found in this Gucci bag. It also tested positive for cocaine and ketamine. We saw the Lumify eye drop label, the Lumify eye drop label bottle. So initially, I was thinking these were just regular eye drops, but turns out that these eye drops actually tested positive and contained MDMA as well as ketamine.
What? In the eye?
A plastic container top. It had kind of a label on it.
What?
DBL wash.
That was how it was disguised.
A lot of stuff, Jesse, that we were seeing inside these exhibit photos.
Right.
A lot of these were pills tested positive for MDMA. 3 orange pills with a triangular shape that were referred to or had a Tesla label on them. Those tested positive for MDMA. We saw 6 rectangular tablets. Those tested positive for alprazolam, aka Xanax. We saw more Xanax pills in there. We saw a $100 bill that was rolled up that tested positive for cocaine and ketamine. We saw a blue tablet that tested positive for meth and MDMA. Another blue pill that had the same test results. We saw more Xanax pills. Then we get into the master bathroom and we see more exhibit photos. So we see an exhibit photo of the master bathroom and a close-up of this wooden box. And this wooden box had the kind of inscription on top labeled Puffy. And so we got to see what was inside that box. More clear pills, a crystallized substance in that box, and then these capsules that were called golden teachers. And I was like, what are golden teachers? And they are actually mushroom capsules. And so those were displayed to the jury. We saw Ziploc bags of a purple solid crystallized type of material that tested positive for MDMA, ecstasy, as well as Molly. We see more kind of labels of what was going on inside the home in just different rooms, such as we saw zoomed in bottles of baby oil and Astroglide. The special agent said that he had seized 25 bottles of baby oil and 31 bottles of Astroglide from the home, but he said that there was actually more baby oil and more Astroglide that was found. We saw the master closet, which had this vital honey. They didn't go too much into the explanation of what this vital honey actually is. We saw the layout of the guest house, and then we see a handgun as well, too. That was in one of the utility closets in a suitcase. It was a .45 caliber handgun. They displayed the handgun in court today. And they also seized the magazine ammunition for this .45 caliber handgun. They displayed this magazine to the jury again, as well as the handgun. And then we saw the box of ammo as well too. So Jesse, it was a lot of stuff, and I'm really just not even scratching the surface of just every single exhibit photo that we saw, but it was just a lot of, it was either a lot of drugs, a few kind of guns, because we had the AR-15s again with the scratched off serial number, something that we had known about for a while now, but it was a lot of stuff, but a very interesting testimony, but not seeing too much really reaction from Diddy when all of this evidence was being displayed in court today.
Because it might not seem on its face how it's relevant to the case. I think it's relevant to the racketeering charge. Remember, one of the drug, possession with intent to distribute is one of the underlying predicate crimes, of racketeering. So having these materials, or allegedly having these materials and the guns, go to this idea of, a criminal enterprise. And I'll talk more about it. And I understand on cross-examination, the defense focused on the fact that Combs wasn't there during the raids. There was no evidence that he was holding or using the guns. They criticized the level of force. Talked about fingerprints that could have been obtained from the weapons. I want to talk actually about Dr. Dawn Hughes before I let you go. Dr. Dawn Hughes, right, this forensic psychologist testified in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. We knew she was going to take the stand in support of understanding Cassie Ventura Fine's actions during this 11-year relationship, not leaving during this relationship, to help her credibility. What did we learn from Dr. Dawn Hughes' testimony so far today?
Yeah, we kind of learned a lot, especially for people who may not be familiar with her work or who speak to forensic psychologists necessarily every single day. And so we learned a little bit just from her perspective on just kind of the role she would be providing as far as testimony goes. And so she was going to be touching on points such as why do individuals stay in domestic violence relationships? Why is there this delayed disclosure, and even just kind of recalling memories from traumatic events. And so, you know, when they were kind of establishing the foundation before her testimony, the prosecution just kind of came out forthright and just said that essentially that she was being compensated for her testimony today, $6,000 just to testify, which is a lot of money. I'm not going to lie about that. But as far as just more of just what she was talking about, she was talking just about physical abuse, and when victims are hit, that their reaction normally is fear, and so they sometimes have that pattern of they sometimes have a hard time breaking that pattern. Then she got into physical abuse and how physical abuse, or excuse me, I said physical again, I meant psychological abuse. That psychological abuse is all about threatening physical violence, and that for the most part, victims are kind of walking on eggshells, and these symptoms kind of include depression, PTSD, anxiety. Then she got into sexual abuse and how that is a private harm, and just some of the highest types of traumatic stress go into that, and that a lot of victims actually experience shame when it comes to sexual abuse. She touched base on emotional abuse as well too, and she had said when we when we belittle and demean and put down our partner, that kind of falls into emotional abuse. If you can't talk about what's happening, how can you necessarily get help? She talked about financial kind of constraints as far as why victims may not leave because of financial reasons.
Yep.
And then she had said that you need tangible reasons to leave. So how do you leave if you don't have tangible resources? And so that was kind of the basis, because there were a lot of objections today, Jesse, despite the defense saying that they weren't going to have a bunch of objections. But one of the cool things I would say about the cross-examination is that we got to see Jonathan Bach actually kind of in action for the first time. He's one of the newest attorneys. I think he makes attorney number 9. And so I was kind of wondering during the cross-examination, because we did get to that before the lunch break, but whether or not these jurors were kind of like, who is this guy and why is he showing up on day 8 of trial? And so I was kind of curious what was going through their mind on seeing this new face today.
Hopefully they're not reading the news and trying to figure out what's going on. Listen, Elizabeth, I know you have to jump back in court. Thank you so much. We'll catch you later. Appreciate it.
Yes. Thanks, Jesse.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're getting to your questions online. Submit them on YouTube. I have a panel of great guests. I'm going to break down everything we just heard. Why is it relevant to the case? Why is it relevant to the charges? Stay with us here on Law and Crime. We'll be right back.
I use baby oil. We are the streets. I use baby oil to make sure my skin stays soft and moist. I don't know what else. He had a fetish with glistening. Ooh, that baby oil was for his feet. Ooh, they coming back. Wait a minute. Let me speak to my tea sippers. Now, I guess it depends on who you ask, because TP, you know who TP is? I don't know how old y'all are, but TP said, rub me down with some hot oil, baby, and I'll do the same thing to you. Just turn on the lights. That's what TP say he used that hot oil for. But the problem with that is, I mean, which is cool, you know, hot oil is cool. I guess it really serves a purpose. It you know, could be a, you know, sensation. However, I don't know if that's the case with Diddy, because hell, he didn't use it. He wasn't using the baby oil. Now, sometimes I looked at him and it looked like he could have rubbed some on his face and stuff, and I don't know, but he had a fetish when it was used in the freak offs. I think he liked that oily look, because that wasn't the glistening, whatever that lubricant stuff. Hell, what he was using to keep his hand strong. I shouldn't. What he was using to keep that gripping when the baby oil. So I guess he had a fixation with the glistening skin. I'm trying, Wilfred. I'm trying to keep it PG. I'm trying to keep it PG. Ooh. That ain't shit. He didn't use that. He didn't want that thing to be glistening. He liked that glistening effect on the other people. You reckon when he looked down, he would want that thing to be glistening? Oh, it wasn't enough to the tissue roll. He didn't the loop. It did it for it. That's he didn't want to. You mean he didn't want to look at that thing either? Hey, Don Play. Why? Peace and her grease, baby. You mean he didn't even want to look at that little thing? That tissue roll.
For your biggest adventures and everyday victories.
Maybe he was trying to get that juicy drive crazy. I don't know. I just think he was weird in the head. I think the mushrooms made him lose his mind for real. I mean, a whole tub. I ain't gonna even be able to look at the kiddie pool the same no more. I'm gonna be looking at them like, no. Why I don't never see no kids in that kiddie pool? Why you got the kiddie pool out in the wintertime? I'm gonna be looking at it with my good eye. Yeah, I'm waiting for them to come back on, and then I'm waiting for the Tisa. Yeah, you know what? All them folk that don't go off. Yeah, I just have observed something. When them folk come over here, they be so. Leave it alone. Yeah, okay. We back. Hey, Willie Spencer. And we back. Come on.
And welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us.
Jesse.
We have this live lunchtime show in the Sean Diddy Combs criminal case. We just heard from Elizabeth Milner, who was inside that courtroom, talking about the day's activities, about a special agent from Homeland Security talking about what was found at one of Sean Combs' properties. We're talking about the testimony of Dr. Dawn Hughes, this psychologist who was brought to the stand by the prosecution, talking about coping strategies, talking about why victims stay with their abusers. Really interesting testimony. A little bit of the cross as well. So we're going to be taking your questions for the next hour or so. Submit them on YouTube. We'll answer them here, but I'm not going to do it alone. I'm here with former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney Florina Altschuyler. Oh, great to see you. You're getting the first question because you came into studio. Thank you so much, Florina. But I love Jeremy Evans, and I love Joe Richardson, too, and they're going to be with us, too. Joe is a civil rights attorney. Jeremy Evans is a sports, entertainment, and media attorney. Great to have you all here. But, Florina, I'm going to start with you. So the first question that we have is, this is from Tia215 Aisha. Are they bringing Cassie back to the stand, Jesse? No. No, her testimony's done. She's 8.5 months pregnant. They wanted to make sure she finished her entire testimony week one. The judge was adamant about that.
That is absolutely correct. They wanted to get her in, get her out, and be done. And I don't see how she's going to be brought back.
Is that a problem for the prosecution or defense, that they can't recall her?
I think that they've sufficiently established what they needed to establish with her, and there really is not a reason to recall her unless some witness later on brings something up that she potentially can then rebut that has not yet come in. And they would need to address that then, but I don't see how they get her back.
We have a question regarding the forensic testimony. So as I mentioned, Dr. Dawn Hughes, the psychologist, has took the stand earlier. I believe she's still going to be cross-examined when they come back. By the way, when they come back, we're going to give you real-time updates about what's happening in court, and we will break down the testimony in real time. But as I mentioned, she testified in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. One of the things she's discussing today are why victims stay, psychological bonds, the consequences, levels of fear, what psychological violence is, the effects of sexual abuse, emotional abuse, something called love bombing. Somebody just shower somebody with gifts and compliments to keep them in a relationship. Coping mechanisms, minimization, very important factors to talk about, because again, the question is, Cassandra Ventura claims she's a victim of sex trafficking. But why did she stay for 11 years? Why did it seem that there was evidence she was setting up
she was
these
being
freak
trafficked.
offs
She
and
thought she
encouraging
was.
these freak offs? There might be alternative explanations, and it might not be
Thought
so
she loved-
easy for the jury just to accept she's
She
not
thought he
telling the
loved
truth.
her.
So here's the thing. Go to you, Joe. We have a question from Jesse K. How can there be two forensic psychologists testifying for each side? Shouldn't there be just one, i.e. the true explanation of trauma response and coping mechanisms, and not two versions of it? I mean, look, we don't know who the defense expert, we know who the defense expert's going to be. The name actually escapes me at the moment, but don't know exactly what they're going to testify to yet. But fair question. Why have so many different experts testify about this?
Well, my dad once told me it's better to have and not need than to need and not have. This is a complicated thing, and the prosecution knows, frankly, they have some explaining to do. There's a lot of people that might disagree with someone being in a relationship that's violent, that's abusive, etc. But everybody knows somebody that's been in that category.
Right.
What they don't know is that, and what they've never thought of, and what the step that has to happen for this prosecution is that the jury's got to see that there's criminal acts involved with this happening. And so it may be that these two experts are dealing with two sides of the coin, two parts of the world, to be able to make sure that they explain everything that needs to explain. They need to explain and cover all bases, because I think there's an admission here that this is very complicated, because this is not something that people see. People are used to domestic violence. That doesn't mean that there's a criminal conspiracy. That doesn't mean that there's racketeering. That doesn't mean that there are RICO violations. So they've really got to do what they need to do to put it together, so that despite the things that Cassie was actually saying about being in love, being in a wonderful relationship, wanting to do the freak offs, etc., that they take away that voluntary element, so that what can be left over is the crime that they are alleging, the crimes that the prosecution are alleging took place here.
And put aside the fact that somebody like Cassie could arguably have agreed to this 95 times, but the 5 times she didn't agree to it, and if you're talking about the 2016 hotel incident, for example, or where she claimed she was on a plane and shown videos of freak-offs and then felt trapped and then was pressured afterwards to have a freak-off with Diddy, you could say those are instances that are not consensual and make up sex trafficking, although this is complicated. It's a gray area. Jeremy, we have a question for you from Mahogany29. Did Kid Cudi testify yet? No, he didn't testify yet. I know he didn't testify yet, but let me expand the question to you. What are you expecting from his testimony, Jeremy?
Well, it's interesting. I think the close relationship and the dispute, amongst the parties, I think clearly leads that, and then the potential that the car was going to be firebombed. I think a lot of these things, kind of like with what Joe was talking about, when you sort of include in the guns and the drugs and everything else that's been going to be put into evidence, and you put in this fact that, Diddy was potentially trying to firebomb a car based on a relationship, I think that's the sort of evidence that would need to go to a RICO charge. They're so rare in terms of coming against celebrities, but it's something that prosecutors have been more willing to do. So I think, if anything, the testimony is going to try to go more towards that RICO charge.
Yeah, because arson, so blowing up the car, is one of the predicate crimes, the underlying crimes that the prosecution's hoping to prove there. And by the way, when Cassie Ventura came out with her lawsuit in 2023, first mentioning this instance or allegation about Combs blowing up Kid Cudi's car, Kid Cudi's team came forward and released a statement basically to the effect saying all of this is true. So he's probably going to testify to something like that. Florina, question for you from Jacqueline Thompson. So, we talked about today, there was a special agent discussing all the raids and what was found at the properties. One question, do any of you think the feds hyped this up? It's a serious question with the heeled shoes, the ducks, the oil. I'm not, you know what I mean? I guess the question is, was there too much there for the raids? I mean, how much does it tie into everything we're talking about?
Well, we're not talking about 1 or 2 bottles of oil. We're talking about massive, massive quantities of oil. And cumulatively taken together between the oil and the toys, it just goes to support the story of these freak-offs being a thing, being an ongoing thing, and each piece of evidence corroborates and supports the credibility of the women who are testifying to these facts. So it's not just them saying he used oil, there's the oil.
And all the drugs, again, one of the underlying crimes of racketeering, possession with intent to distribute. If he's got all the drugs, so it not only goes to the narrative put forward by the prosecution that he would drug victims to keep them compliant. If you're talking about a criminal enterprise engaged in a massive amount of criminal activity, having all those drugs and the guns definitely feeds into that narrative. Joe, I'll go to you. This is from Legs 7K. Legs 7K has been with us, I think, for every one of the live streams. So thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for coming in and checking us out. Hi, studio. I apologize if this is wrong, but Cassie has given evidence. What about the other male who pressed charges, Lil Rod, I think? Will he be testifying, do you think? Now, he didn't press charges. He filed a lawsuit against Sean Combs. I don't believe he's going to testify, Joe, right? Because I remember in a pretrial filing, the defense had mentioned producer 1 will not be testifying. And if you read between the lines, it looked like Lil Rod. So he showed up outside of court for week 1, but I don't think he's going to be testifying, right? And if he doesn't testify, because he made racketeering allegations himself, sex trafficking allegations himself, if he doesn't testify, does that mean his claims aren't legit?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like he's going to testify, and the prosecution has to decide who's going to really help us get over the line here. And they've made a decision that particular potential witness, there's not going to be enough happening there. The fact that somebody has filed a civil complaint with the different standards of proof, et cetera, there's 20 to 30 of those now, right? So that doesn't mean that just because they filed those things, Cassie is the one with a mountain of credibility in terms of having filed this case. And they largely based their criminal case on the things that she said in her civil case to support what they'd already done, the work that they had already done, the investigation that they'd already had. The fact that there's a whole lot of other people, whether you want to call them copycats, whether their cases are totally legit or not, they're civil cases. They're not criminal cases. And so the standard, of course, is higher. We got to go beyond a reasonable doubt. So the prosecution has to be very, very picky about who helps them put together the pieces to get over the line as it pertains to this criminal RICO matter. It's not a civil matter. This happened and it shouldn't have, because they could be true, but it doesn't mean that he's going to be convicted. And so they're making decisions about who it is that's going to testify the best, who's going to give them the most. My sense is they probably want as many women to testify as possible. I mean, I would imagine that, and just decided that particular witness wasn't going to be one of them.
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the reasons people have so much interest in this case is the celebrity factor. Who's going to be named? Who might be called as a witness? Jeremy, we got a question here from Mikey John. Hi, Jesse. Do you think we will see Usher, Neo, or Jimmy Iovine on the stand, or any other celebrities who might have witnessed Sean Combs' crimes? Because we know the testimony this past week suggested, this is from Dawn Richard, that Usher, Neo, others, they had witnessed Sean Combs.
After my car wreck, there was a lot I didn't know.
I didn't know a lawyer would help organize my medical records and bills. I didn't know that talking to the insurance...
I don't think so. And I think if they did call them to the stand, it would be as a defense witness to defend against, Sean Combs. But I do think that it's interesting because we would obviously know in advance as to what witnesses were being called. So even if we don't know them now, there would have to be some sort of notice provided as to who that particular witness would be. And to a point that Joe was making too, I think we also have to consider the civil aspect of this, because even if Diddy is not convicted for the crime, he could clearly be sued for civil damages, as we sort of saw in the O.J. Simpson case and in others.
Got a question for you, Florina, from Lami Mami. Lami Mami, great name. If convicted, how many years would Diddy have to face at least?
It depends on which charges he's convicted of,
Right.
but he is looking at very serious time with mandatory minimums that are going to involve federal prison. This is not the type of crime where he's going to get probation or a suspended sentence. If he's convicted of all of the charges, we're looking at serious double-digit
And
federal
potentially
time.
life in prison.
And right.
Sex trafficking's minimum 15 years in prison. You know, transportation doing age or prostitution is a max of 10 years in prison. Which may, okay, let me follow up that question up with something else. A lot of talk about would he have taken a deal? Was he offered a deal? Maybe offered a deal, rejected it. What would a deal have looked like in this case? And by the way, what would a deal have looked like before trial? And what could a deal look like in the middle of trial? Although it seems unlikely he's going to plead guilty.
With federal sentencing guidelines, the feds really don't offer great deals. You can reduce your sentence by a number of months, but if someone is looking at a potential of life in prison and looking at a minimum of 15 years, they're not offering him something that's a matter of 1 or 2 or 3 years. I would expect if they did make an offer, that the offer would have been something in the double digits in
Like
terms of
10 years
prison
or
time.
something, yeah.
Right. And oftentimes somebody without a significant criminal record who has not spent years in prison, that's a serious number. And so they're going to think that they could hire a great trial team and maybe beat the charges.
I think that's one of the reasons he rushed towards trial, right? Any federal case would take a while. I mean, to have a trial happen within less than a year of arrest and indictment when there's superseding indictments and it's a racketeering case, if he had made bail, he would have pushed this trial out as far as possible. I'm still convinced of that. Okay, so they are back from court. I'm giving everybody updates about what's happening. The prosecutor says, Your Honor, we emailed you the exhibit over the break, and Mr. Agnifilo, Mark Agnifilo, who's Sean Combs' attorney, one of his attorneys, we object to it as hearsay. The statement, thank you, I feel you from, I feel, this is weird. Thank, I feel you from Mr. Combs is ambiguous. He could be saying thanks for the advice. Not entirely clear what this is about. Continue on with their update from court. We'll pick it up after Dr. Hughes. This is what the judge says. Please get her back on the stand. So now she is entering, the jury's entering, and Mr. Bach, who is one of the new additions to Sean Combs' defense counsel, says, you are with the American Psychology Association, which says you should only render an opinion after an examination, right? And Dr. Dawn Hughes says, we're. So that's interesting, Jeremy, right? They're going to her, not necessarily her qualifications, but they're going to the credibility of her opinions in this case regarding why victims don't leave their abusers and coping mechanisms and things of that nature. That feels
Just
like
in
where they
general.
need to go with this cross-examination.
No, I completely agree, and I think the reason for that is the amount of times that it occurred. It'd be one thing if it was 1 or 2 times, right, that these parties engaged in the freak-offs, but ultimately these were occurring, 50, 60, 70 to 90 times. So I think her testimony is so important in that regard, because she's going to be able to show that in abusive relationships, the tendency is for the victim to blame themselves. And also I could imagine some of the defense strategy would be that the victims decided to stay in because they were scared of him, scared of the firebombing, with Kid Cudi's car and everything else that was going on, the guns in the house, the drugs, not to mention the lack of a mental state if you're under the influence. So her testimony is maybe one of the most important in this case.
Well, Joe, I'm going to throw a question to you that we've gotten a lot this past week. It is a fair question. If we're talking about a racketeering conspiracy that Combs had to agree with at least one person to further racketeering activity, illegal activity, that he had his associates and his bodyguards and his assistants help carry out crimes and cover up crimes. Here's the question from Rookie 18, Joe. Where are the rest of the people for the RICO charge?
They're getting
Listen,
deals.
Rookie 18 makes a wonderful, wonderful point. I never thought that ninth grade English would come in handy 30 years later. But we used to do prefixes, and you had to define the prefixes, and one is con, C-O-N. That's with or together. So there's a conspiracy, but who is he conspiring with? Even at the beginning, when RICO first started getting, using prosecutions to get mobsters, etc., they never prosecuted those guys alone, but prosecute a whole lot of them, then maybe get some to sell out on other ones. So it's a very fair question, but they also know that sometimes when they put too many people up in here together, you end up having problems. The Young Thug case, I think, is a perfect example of that. On the other hand, they do the same thing with R. Kelly, with just R. Kelly. Even though you're alleging conspiracy in RICO. Yeah. So that's a very fair question. And on the defense side, to the point that was made before, I think some of these stars will come in and say, yeah, I was there. I never saw this or that or the other. And it reminds the jury, well, I'm not saying he's not a domestic abuser, but he's hanging out with Michael B. Jordan or with Usher or, fill in the blank, whoever it is. And it might be a little freaky, but it's not criminal. Because if it was really criminal and if it was really a conspiracy, there'd be more than just him. And so I think that's a very fair question. It's something that the prosecution is going to have to make sure they explain really, really well. I think this is even more of a stretch, honestly, than even the Young Thug case, where at least it's showing up in their music and those types of things. So they might have a problem that way.
It was more easily digestible that there was a gang, right? As opposed to Combs operating his businesses. I mean, he's a famous guy. They could probably say, of course he's got security. Of course they have guns. Of course he's trying to protect himself. But the more like David James testifying yesterday, his former assistant, saying, it's Combs' kingdom. We got to take lie detector tests. We got to supply the rooms. Cassie Ventura talking about assistance, cleaning up after the freak-offs, tracking her location. That's what they need to get to this as a criminal enterprise. It's interesting. It's interesting. Okay, this is talking interesting. Great question from Rel, also frequent contributor here on the live stream. I'll go to you with this, Florina. Does the evidence like text messages outweigh witness testimony? And I'll give you an example. I imagine Rel might be saying this because Cassie Ventura takes the stand, says she was victimized, she was exploited by Sean Combs, that she did all of this without her consent, and yet there are messages from her to him where she's encouraging freak-offs, asking for freak-offs, complying with freak-offs, setting up the freak-offs. Text messages outweigh witness testimony? What do you think?
The text messages certainly question the credibility of the witness testimony, but you have to remember that this is a relationship that spanned more than a decade. And so, as one would expect, in a decade of time, you're going to have periods of time where maybe she consented, and then you're going to have periods of time where she did not want this. And the psychologist's testimony is where I think it's going to tie together an explanation for why somebody may appear to be consenting via text message, but really still be traumatized, abused, and not really consenting. But I think those text messages are great fodder for cross-examination and an opportunity for the defense attorneys to question her credibility.
But the prosecution knew about it. They knew about these messages, and they put her on the stand, they put this case forward. I wonder if the jury says, it's not like this was a surprise. The prosecution knew it, meaning maybe it doesn't matter as much. Maybe we're looking too much into it. The prosecution's not worried about it. What do you think?
Well, why are they calling the psychologist, right? They're worried about it enough to need an expert opinion to explain it away. And I think anybody would wonder, well, if you're saying this is okay in text message, why are you now at trial saying you never agreed to this and it's not okay?
Good point. Good point. That's why so they might, that's a good point. The jury could be saying, they need to call a psychologist to explain this. That's a good point. All right. This is great. We have a super chat question from Nestdog, who's also been a frequent contributor for these live shows. Nestdog, thank you so much for your support. Jeremy, I'll throw this to you. Doesn't his assistant count towards RICO? I'm assuming they're talking about David James, who I mentioned before. Doesn't his assistant count towards RICO?
No, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the key elements of a RICO charge, you have to have sort of a formal organization, which could also be sort of an informal group of people, which you have with people who are engaging in these freak-offs. there has to be some pattern of racketeering activity, which would include drugs, gun violence, sex trafficking, which clearly there's evidence of that, at least from the testimony. And then a connection to some sort of enterprise, right, where, Diddy or whoever his assistant was. And by the way, the conspiracy piece on this could also be connected back to some of the victims who were testifying. I think that's why the testimony of the psychologist is so important, because ultimately, if the person testifying for the prosecution was not testifying, there might be a chance that they might be brought as a defendant in this case. So I think it's interesting. The other point I want to mention too is when you compare this to, I think Joe and Florina both mentioned this, when you look at the R. Kelly case and the Ghislaine Maxwell cases, both of them received 30 years for sex trafficking and RICO violations, at least R. Kelly did, and Miss Maxwell received 20 years on tracks. So just for perspective.
Yeah, and people made the same criticism of Ghislaine Maxwell. Who did she traffic all these minors to? Right, because they're not part of the case. All right, we got an update from court. Dr. Hughes testifies. This is a different role, Sean Combs' defense counsel says. You have not gathered information about this case, right? I am not rendering an opinion on any individual. There's someone named Cassie, but you don't know what she said, right? I don't. Right? Cases are different, correct? It's to help the jurors understand, but it's their job to consider their case, right? See, Joe, that's so important, right? I don't believe she was permitted to testify specifically about Cassie Ventura because she didn't examine her. She's providing these overarching concepts for the jury to understand. Is this good cross-examination?
I think it is good cross-examination because the defense, to win this case, you're going to have to do a whole lot of sideswiping. You're going to have to be able to undermine what even a credible or likable witness is saying by being able to establish, in this particular case, well, you didn't test her, so we really shouldn't be listening to you at all, right? Or that this situation is so distinguishable from what you normally dealt with, from what you dealt with before. And by the way, because it's distinguishable, but you're saying the same thing in two different cases, then you shouldn't be believed anyway. So an unlikable witness you can attack. A witness that's not likable, you can sideswipe them and say, well, regardless of what you're saying, it doesn't really apply here for this reason, that reason, either because of something you didn't do or because something wasn't done underlying, or we're talking apples and oranges. So I think it is important from a cross-examination standpoint because all of these witnesses that come in with something that has the potential to bear negatively on Sean Combs, particularly making the dots connect about why someone would stay in a relationship and this becomes potentially a criminal thing, keeps him in the game for it, you've got to undermine him somehow.
The cross-examination is continuing. So Sean Combs' defense counsel asks, you don't publish data on the patients you have evaluated, do you? Dr. Hughes says it's confidential. So I can't cross-check your experience, the basis of what you're saying, right? Okay, we got a super chat question from Nate. Nate, thank you so much. I'll throw it to you, Florina. Do you think that Cassie's testimony helped them swing the case towards the prosecution? Also, has other celebrities come out about the case?
Well, she is the star witness for the prosecution. Certainly the detailed accounts of abuse and the episodes of him beating her and what he was doing to her was compelling. But, this is the beginning of a long road, and we await to see where it goes and what the other witnesses will say and what witnesses the defense may potentially put on to rebut what Cassie said. You have to remember that this is an ongoing, lengthy relationship over many years with these alleged violent acts and sex parties that she may or may not have consented to. It's the prosecution's position that she didn't. She testified that she didn't, but there's some evidence to suggest that maybe she was either coerced to do this, which would support the prosecution, or that she was a willing participant that wanted to be in a relationship with him.
And have other celebrities come out about the case? I mean, not as many as we thought originally when the allegations came forward. Sure, you had Dawn Richard take the stand, right? You had Kerry Morgan, celebrity. I mean, Kid Cudi's about to testify. But I don't think we're going to get J-Lo on the stand, right?
Right. I don't think this is going to be Jeffrey Epstein level sex allegations with a litany of celebrities suddenly coming forward. We also know from the civil lawsuits that were filed who the potential pool of witnesses may be. And like in any federal criminal case, the prosecution has to exchange their witness list ahead of time. And so if somebody's not on that list, it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to suddenly bring somebody in that has not yet been disclosed on that list.
Jeremy, going to you. Question from Spencer Campbell. Aren't many of his ex-employees testifying against him? Wouldn't these people be considered conspiracy or who he's conspiring with?
Yes, potentially, especially if the prosecution can prove that they were a part of these discussions and or the planning that was going into some of these freak offs. But that being said, similar to the victim's testimony, it really has to be able to show that they weren't coerced into doing this, they weren't held at gunpoint or felt threatened or under duress, that sort of thing. So yes, they can be considered part of it, but again, there's two sides to that coin.
So Joe, this is a good question from Words 789. Will Diddy's apology video be used as evidence? And that's the video came out 2 days after CNN published the 2016 footage of him appearing to beat up Cassie Ventura, where he apologized, and you wonder from a legal point of view why he did it, because he's essentially admitting it's him on the tape. It's not as if the tape was doctored. He admitted it was basically him. I don't think it's been admitted yet, right? I could be wrong, but I don't think so. And why wasn't it admitted during Cassie Ventura's testimony? Do you think it's going to be admitted?
I don't believe it has been either. And of course, the defense will fight like heck to keep it from getting in. I would argue it's more prejudicial than probative. It doesn't accomplish anything. It reminds it knocks on the door once again for the prosecution to say, jury, hey, this guy's really a criminal. But the fact of the matter is he's acknowledging being a domestic abuser. That's what the video is about. So it's really repetitive. Once the tape came in, we know what he did. Once the tape came in, him apologizing for the tape, he's not acknowledging that he's a sex trafficker. He's not acknowledging that he should be guilty of RICO. He's not acknowledging that there's a conspiracy. He didn't say me and a bunch of other guys did it. You know what I mean? So they'll fight like heck to keep it from coming in. I'm pretty sure it's not in yet. But I would argue that it's just more redundant than anything because it continues to knock on the door and remind the jury. They still have to make that step, though, to make it a criminal conspiracy. And the video acknowledges that he's a domestic abuser. That's why they ran to that in opening and said, we own that he's a domestic abuser and it's not cool. That's why he ran to that, because now this is redundant and doesn't add it.
There's not much more they can go. I mean, they can't deny what everybody sees in that video. Although, here's what's interesting. Now we go back to the cross-examination that's happening in real time of Dr. Dawn Hughes. Again, this witness called by the prosecution to explain why perhaps somebody in Cassie Ventura's position would have stayed with her alleged abuser, Sean Diddy Combs, despite everything that she claimed is happening to him. Happening to her. So, Jeremy, I'll go to you. Sean Combs' defense counsel asks her, people might go to a civil lawyer to make a little money, right? There's an objection from the prosecution. The judge says, let's move on. He says, in civil litigation, you might look for malingering, right? Where that's somebody who fakes their symptoms. What are we taking away from that line of questioning?
I think that the defense counsel is trying to poke holes in the sort of expert testimony of this psychologist and her ability to make money in these cases or her ability to get paid for these matters. But I think a jury, for the most part, will see past that. And again, the other side will have an opportunity to bring their own expert in to testify, and that person will also be cross-examined. I think, if anything, it's kind of what Joe was saying earlier, that ultimately the defense has to throw some things at the wall and kind of figure out what sticks. And I think poking holes in sort of this expert testimony, I think what it highlights too is the fact how important, again, this testimony is. Because Cassie stayed so long in the relationship, there has to be proof that she was under, some duress and some sort of psychological issues. And I think that's the point that's trying to be made.
I want to do a round robin. answer here from every one of my guests. I'll go one at a time because we just got this super chat question from 1989 who actually paid in Swiss francs. So thank you so much for this contribution. First time we've seen that. Okay, I'll start with you, Florina. At this point, if you could put it in a percentage, will Sean Combs get convicted of something he's charged with?
I think there's a very high likelihood that he'll be convicted of something, 75% or more.
Of what charge?
That's a good question.
Transportation to engage in prostitution?
I think at a minimum with what the evidence is so far, transportation to engage in prostitution is a likely conviction.
Because that's pretty straightforward. It's transporting people for the purposes of prostitution.
Right, and the evidence is that he was paying people as escorts, paying people to engage in sex acts, and providing the transportation for that to happen.
Joe, percentage. At this point, if you could put in percentage, will Sean Combs get convicted of something he's charged with?
I would put it at 50-50. There's something that doesn't make sense with Sean Combs.
Oh, wow.
Frankly, he should have gotten convicted years ago with the Shine case.
So why is it 50-50?
And he threw Shine under the bus. Shine did hard time. I had a conversation with my mother, and she let me know that, Joe, I have real concerns about this because of the passage of time. And will the person, the jury, be able to separate all of these crimes, right, the way that they need to? If they are, like what was just said, then maybe they get there at transportation, right? But I'd say 50-50 right now because my sense is I think it could be an all or nothing proposition because there's something about him and New York City that it may be that somebody might be there.
You're talking about what's been presented.
Jury, to hang that jury.
You just need one. Before I go to the poll that we have up, and very interesting poll. Jeremy, your percentage.
So the three charges, right? Sex trafficking, racketeering, and drug distribution of firearm, 100% on drug distribution of firearm offenses. I don't think there's any doubt there, particularly with the shaved off numbers on the guns.
Well, he's not individually charged with those. They're part of the racketeering case.
Right. And then I think the racketeering piece, I would say 75%, just based on comparing it to other cases with R. Kelly and Miss Maxwell, I'd say 75%.
Okay, here's the poll, okay? How impactful do you think expert psychological testimony has on understanding the case? Who's ready for this? 80% say very impactful. 20% say not impactful. Quite the number, Florina.
I'm not surprised at all because on its face, the testimony is not very believable when you have delayed disclosures,
right,
when you have behavior that suggests that somebody is okay with this kind of behavior. And so the cycle of abuse needs to be explained by an expert. And when you have someone who's supposedly objective, somebody who doesn't have any bias, someone who's not really friends with or related to either side coming in and lending their expertise to explain what is common in that field, here being the field of psychology, it tends to be very helpful.
Got a super chat question again from Nate. Nate, thank you so much. Jeremy?
Your day just became much more refreshing. Builder's Gin is crafted in KC by master designers.
Do they think that he would get a life sentence or just a slap on the wrist if he's convicted?
Oh, he out of here.
Sure. So, there may be, jurors are not without emotion. So clearly they can see people, they're seeing people in person, and you can have a reaction. I think there is definitely an opportunity for that. As far as, how much time he'll get, again, I think it's probably more like if he's convicted 30 years to life, and with his age, he'll probably spend the rest of his time in prison. And as Florina talked about earlier, there's very little wiggle room on the federal charges, and there's generally not any parole opportunities. You can have supervised release. So my guess is around 30 years to life.
Okay, we got an update from court. So Sean Combs' defense attorney says, you gave a webinar about giving expert witness testimony, right? Again, questioning Dr. Dawn Hughes. Dr. Hughes responds, yes, for battered women. Let me show you DX, and then the judge calls for a sidebar. Joe, what are you getting from the cross-examination? What is the theme of the cross-examination right now?
Yeah, I think that they want to undermine his credibility because I think that they're gonna try to show that, you know, you're doing webinars, you're coaching battered women, you're coaching people, you're letting the jury know, you're letting the lawyers that hire you know that you're gonna come in and do whatever needs to be done for this person in this category, which on some level may be true for all experts, but they want to undermine the basis and the window that he comes through. So if they can say the window that this expert witness comes through is always one that's going to support this person, despite what may be some people's notions of common sense, then they can't be trusted. Because fundamentally, again, they want the defense to get back to the place, or excuse me, the jury to get back to the place where they would say, my first inclination is this looks voluntary and it's a long, long time. How do you get past that? So hopefully they're using that witness on the cross to flip back to that and to get back to people's notions of common sense based on their own experience. Again, this is very unusual.
Question from Rel for you, Florina. Why do the feds keep bringing up weapons, but they didn't charge Diddy with weapons violations? That's a great question, because they could have easily at the federal level charged him with possession of weapons regarding the serial numbers and things of that nature. They didn't. Why not?
Well, it's a fact that's part of the racketeering charge, so they do need it as evidence to support the racketeering charge. Without those weapons, the racketeering charge falls. Why didn't they charge it as its own charge, like possession of the weapon, the weapon being illegal? Oftentimes, they don't charge the weapon individually. That's something we see in state cases as criminal possession of a weapon. They will charge weapons charges as its own thing in federal court when it's part of sex trafficking or part of drug distribution, or when the weapon itself was being used. So a gun that was fired, or when it's a weapon that has been altered to have maybe larger capacity than what's legal, automatic weapons, machine guns, things like that. And also when we're talking about weapons in large quantities. I think none of that applies here. And really, it's just a prejudicial fact that's going to be used against him. And it's also a fact that's going to be used to support the ultimate racketeering charge.
Got a question from Jesse K. I'll throw this to you, Jeremy. Serious question. How can someone not get mad hearing the defense basically suggesting that Cassie and possibly other victims faked their symptoms after seeing these injuries? I think this goes to the question for Dr. Dawn Hughes about, was it possible that people malinger, right, fake the symptoms of being abused or being victims? That's a fair question. Could the jury be upset at hearing this line of questioning?
Maybe, but I think ultimately most.
Yeah, I have to make a call. Give me a minute. Bear with me.
and the point that the defense is trying to make a case. And ultimately, I
Thank
think
you
it's
for the ones
fair
who
from a
stayed. I
defense
greatly
standpoint
appreciate it.
to point out that somebody stayed that long in a relationship, one, but two, potentially also helped organize, and there's evidence of that, some of these freak offs, right? So I think it's fair questioning, but I think it also highlights the difficult job that prosecutors and defense lawyers have in these types of cases. Because no matter what, you're going to have some people on one side saying that took it too far, and the other people on the other side saying they didn't take it far enough. So,
Well, I'll tell you, for that lack of consensus, got a question for you, Florina, from Never Be. What happens if the jury's hung?
If the jury is hung, then it's case over, and then the prosecution has the option to retry the case if they want to. Most of the time, they retry it, unless they hear that they were hung, let's say 11-1 in favor of the defense, because when they're hung, they can find out what the numbers were, how many for the prosecution, how many for the defense. I've seen cases where sometimes when they're heavily skewed for the defense and hung by one person for the prosecution,
For those of us with service animals, preparation is key. Ensure your buddy always...
Or if it's 11-1 in the other direction, right? Okay, so we have a question here from Mikey John. I'll throw this to you, Joe. Long Crime Network, thank you, everyone, for the great answers. One more question. Will Christina Coram, who, as we know, is Combs, or apparently Combs' former chief of staff, will Christina Coram be put on the stand? And if so, for the defense or for the prosecution? Joe?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I forget how that, how she was being talked about, right? I think the same thing that can make you laugh will make you cry. If she was going to be central, what the prosecution needs that they don't have. Cassie is the quote star witness, but she was in love, and a lot of times it's almost like she kind of didn't know what was going on, right? Or at least it can be perceived that way. And if that's the case, then how do you know that this isn't voluntary? How do you know this? What they need is someone like someone in that position. And I don't know if this chief of staff would give them this information. The prosecution would do it. They would have said so probably in opening if they would. Somebody that is very clear-headed and saying, Diddy, Mr. Combs, you can't do this. I witnessed some things. I was scared to talk about it because I
He
knew
already
that they
said
were
that
wrong.
this is his
He
kingdom.
went to another place. Somebody that can really, in a clear-headed fashion, really help put the conspiracy together, put the criminal element together. If the chief of staff can do that, then yeah, I'd be looking at it. But I don't think we've heard that that's going to happen. And I would imagine that if the defense could use the chief of staff, who is somebody who is very close to things by the nature of their job, to say anything positive, I think the defense will be more likely to use that person for that very reason.
Her name came up already in prior testimony where it was that she would call to try to find out where Cassandra Ventura was. Again, if we're talking about Cassandra Ventura being an alleged victim of sex trafficking, to have one of his assistants try to keep tabs on her and find out where she is, obviously that helps with the racketeering charge. We got a super chat question from Lawyer Batty. Thank you so much for this, the contribution. Really appreciate it. I'll go to you, Jeremy, with this one. What would be the fundamental differences between Ghislaine and Cassie if both were willing participants who aided in the process? That's an interesting comparison to make. But you go first, Jeremy, and then I'll give you my opinion.
Well, again, I think as long as there's, evidence to show that they were sort of engaging in sort of helping the relationships to move forward, organizing these sex activities. But again, Cassie is going to be shielded from that as a victim, right? And ultimately, I think the prosecution's case is going to be essential to her testimony and, or at least to her, to what she provided and what the evidence is. But I don't know so much of a comparison can be made there. Again, I think I would go back to the expert and to what Cassie has said as to proving the prosecution's case.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think you can make the comparison between the two because Cassandra Ventura is not being characterized as a willing participant in further criminal activities, like she's part of kidnapping and forced labor and arson, whereas Ghislaine Maxwell was accused and ultimately convicted of being a key participant in the trafficking of people to other individuals. And, they're saying Cassandra Ventura is a victim of that, and she can't be a conspirator in her own victimhood unless you try to say she was instrumental in transporting prostitutes for purposes of prostitution. I think that's a little bit of a stretch. Okay, update from court. The judge says, jurors, we're going to send you to the jury room for a bit. All rise. The jurors leave. The judge says, yesterday, Ms. Shapiro, who's one of the defense counsel, submitted an exhibit ex parte. Now reviewing a document, what should I focus on? Prosecutor says it shouldn't show this witness has a bias. Interesting. Again, talking about Dr. Dawn Hughes. Got a question for you, Florina, from Lotus Flower. Do you think they can call Suge Knight since Cassie spoke about the incident with him? Diddy going after him with 3 guns in his lap?
Can they potentially? Maybe. If the testimony were to show something that would attack the credibility of another witness, then they could call him to impeach that credibility. The big question is whether or not that witness was disclosed on the witness list. And if the witness was not disclosed on the witness list previously, they would need a compelling reason for the late disclosure to call the person, not for the prosecution's case, but on rebuttal.
This is an interesting question from Chris Buono. I'll throw it to you, Joe. How would a witness sit with the jury if they take the stand as a hostile witness and then take the fifth?
Well, that's always interesting. It actually depends on who the witness is, right? And what, the questioning attorney who's put them on as a hostile witness. So going through that scenario, that means somebody was supposed to be called or was supposed to testify way X or way Y, and they didn't, or they refused to, right? And so therefore, you're going to put them on as a hostile witness. Now they're going to take the fifth. Well, that could be good news and bad news for the prosecution, because could the jury be saying, well, prosecution, why aren't you prosecuting this person as well? And if you're looking for a hostile witness to give you what you need, that must mean that your case, as it pertains to people that are not either being called hostily, even if they're not, excited, exuberant witnesses, that means your case isn't tight enough. You need a hostile witness, somebody that's not saying what it is that they need to, and so therefore you want to wring it out of them in order for you to get your conviction. So I think it would be a bit distracting if someone is coming on and they're not cooperating, because it might say that you took this chance because there were weaknesses in your case.
Jeremy, got a question from Soul Shadow. A name that keeps coming up over and over is D-Rock. So this is one of his members of the security team. Do you think he's going to be called to testify too?
Again, as Florina mentioned, unless it was on the witness list, no, unless there's a compelling reason to do that. But again, I think if it's similar to Kaplan's situation where he's provided immunity, I think you can bring him on the stand and just make sure that he's providing, whatever details he can so he's not prosecuted against, right?
Are you talking about Mr. James? You're talking about Mr. James, the assistant from yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Because he was offered a proffer agreement.
Right. So some level of protection to get him up there. But again, unless he's on the witness list, unlikely unless there's a compelling reason. And if he does, he would, ultimately any lawyer would tell him, don't take the stand unless you've clearly gotten some level of protection there.
Yeah, because again, I think he could be instrumental in the racketeering charge, and especially if he witnessed or was furthering any of the alleged abuse of Cassandra Ventura. Got a question for you, Joe, from Danny. So what were all of the known evidence found during the raid? What did they find during the raids of his property? We talked about it a little bit more earlier with Elizabeth.
We've talked about that some, but we've talked about, sex, drugs, rock and roll. I mean, all kinds of stuff. They found, cocaine on dollar bills. They found scratched off guns. They found things that would seem to be, that would indicate potential criminal activity.
Cell phones in the shoes?
Cell phones and shoes. scrapped off serial numbers off of guns when people want to do something using a gun and get away with it, right? And have it be under the radar. So a lot of things that may indicate there are things going on that are unseemly, right? Whole lot of high heels and shoes, a whole lot of
baby oil, personal lubricant,
a whole lot of things,
ammunition
that are the instrumentalities of the freak off, as it were. But I think it might be a little bit more powerful that the things that people traditionally associate with crimes are being found. Things related to guns.
We had a poll go up. Does the evidence found during the raid on Diddy's Miami mansion strengthen the prosecution's case? 83% say yes, 17% say no. I got another update from court. The judge says she can be shown the document. So again, this is Dr. Dawn Hughes. She can be shown the document about training domestic violence advocates and asked if she remembers, but I won't admit it as evidence until she denied it and it becomes a prior inconsistent statement. So something that would challenge her credibility. I'm going to go to you, Florina, with a question from Mary O'Connell. Will Diddy be taking the stand?
That is a great question. The unfortunate answer is we really don't know until it happens. Oftentimes, even the defendant's attorney does not know until it happens. It's really not a decision that can be made until the prosecution rests. And then it's going to be a question of, does the defense believe that the prosecution met their burden and put on enough evidence, in which case the defense needs to put something on as a Hail Mary to raise questions and raise doubt? Or does the defense believe that they did a good enough job of attacking all those witnesses through cross-examination and can credibly argue that the prosecution failed to meet their burden of proof and there's not sufficient evidence to convict, and therefore there really is no need to put on any witnesses, Diddy or others, because the prosecution just didn't do a good enough job. Remember, the burden of proof is always with the prosecution. So if the prosecution fails, the defense doesn't need to do anything. If the prosecution does a damn good job, the defense has a problem. Their Hail Mary may be him testifying.
Joe, Jeremy, do either of you 100% believe that Diddy's going to take the stand? I've spoken to people who are like, he's definitely going to do it. Do either of you believe he's definitely going to take the stand, or do you kind of have that reasonable interpretation, as Florina had mentioned?
I don't believe he will, because he's the heart and soul of New York at his best. There's no way he's going to get on the stand and look better. He's got to rely on his presentation and how people feel about him to give him the benefit of the doubt based on the evidence. He doesn't have to get on the stand for that to happen.
Jeremy, I'll give you the final word on it.
Absolutely not. I don't think there's a chance that he takes the stand. There's no way. I think psychologically he's not in the right place. And I think ultimately, I don't think the jury would have any sympathy with him.
Yeah, I think it might hurt his case more than help his case. Although, listen, he testified in his prior
Is he gonna
trial
get up there and make
25 years ago.
excuses?
Very different
Try to smooth
circumstances
talk
than we have
folk.
here. He also made the apology video
Freak.
on Instagram.
The sweetest moments deserve the
Freak.
boldest
I would
flavors.
look at him and say,
like
freak,
our
if
new
you don't.
concrete mixers and lemon ice coolers.
I tell you what, it was a
Y'all listen. If he got on the stand and I was a juror, I'd be looking at him like, why my eye running? Really? Really? You think you gonna play in my face? Doodle. Little. Y'all know I ain't no good.
great discussion that we had today. Scheller,
Really?
Jeremy Evans, Joe Richardson, thank you all for coming on and breaking down the nuances of this case, the updates in this case, and also, of course, all of our viewer questions. Thank you to you three.
Thanks much.
All right, so before I let you guys go, and thank you so much for all of your fantastic questions, I just want to let you know we plan on keep on doing these lunchtime shows for you as much as we possibly can.
Appreciate
and the reason we can do it is because we have the support of our incredible sponsor and partner, Morgan & Morgan. This is great. Now, if you don't know who they are, they're America's largest
Okay, hold on. I got more. Tell me more. Tell me more. I know he wasn't crying. Hold on, y'all. I got more lined up. What did I just do? Yeah.
That Combs, allegedly ran this criminal enterprise that engaged in crimes for years. That's why we're going to bring on the man himself. Well, there have already been a ton of moments in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, but you know who has not missed one bit? Matthew Russell Lee, the guy who posts real-time updates from court as inner city press. You probably have been following his posts. In a trial with no cameras, Matthew is there. So not only do we want to know what it's like to be one of the main sources of up-to-date information on the case, but who better to get some insight on the trial, the evidence, and who may be winning. That's why we're going to bring on the man himself. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, this is another Law and Crime legal alert. If you received Depo-Provera birth control shots and were later diagnosed with a brain or spinal tumor called meningioma, you may be eligible for a lawsuit. That's right, Morgan & Morgan is investigating claims.
That's why I had it where I had it.
Every aspect of Sean Diddy Combs' racketeering, sex trafficking, prostitution trial, that Combs, allegedly ran this criminal enterprise that engaged in crimes for years. Prosecutors say that he used his business and associates to commit crimes, covered them up, that those underlying predicate acts or crimes as part of racketeering include kidnapping, drug distribution, arson, bribery, forced labor, sex trafficking. And by the way, speaking of sex trafficking, he's also facing charges there. Allegations that Combs used lies and drugs and threats and violence to force and coerce victims or alleged victims like Cassie Ventura and others into sex acts against their will. So from jury selection to opening statements to the testimony of Cassie to an alleged male performer who purportedly participated in freak-offs with Combs and Cassie to a former friend to a former Combs band member to a former assistant to a security guard, we have been bringing you daily updates for this trial. But the problem is, there are no cameras in that courtroom. There is no audio equipment in that courtroom. So we have been doing our best to try to relay to you.
Everyone uses the internet.
Excuse me.
To try to relay to you as much detail as possible. And one of the reasons that we've been able to do that is because of our next guest. There is somebody who has not only been in that courtroom every day, but who live tweets, live posts on X in real time as the trial progresses, each moment, somebody that we have definitely looked to for quick updates on this case. This guy is a legend. I'm talking about Matthew Russell Lee, but you may know him from his account, Inner City Press. Seriously, check him out on X. Has over 350,000 followers. What a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming here on Sidebar, and thank you so much for the work that you've been doing day in and day out.
Thanks a lot. I'm glad to be on. It's really fun. I cover a lot of different cases, but everyone, this case is like extremely hype. But then in the middle of it, I went upstairs to another RICO case where there are 27 defendants. All of the family members are in the courtroom, but there's no press at all.
Right.
And these people are facing, two of them face the death penalty. So it's sort of it's a tale of two legal systems.
Yeah, and to be clear, you cover a ton of different federal trials, and it's one of the reasons you have this particular access to the Diddy trial and actually the ability to transcribe what's happening. And by the way, your notes, phenomenal, because I actually match your notes up to the transcript that we get at the end of the day. It's almost verbatim. So, I don't know if you realize this, but you are somebody who not only knows the ins and outs of this case, but one of the reasons I'm so happy to have you to talk about this, but so many people are relying on you for updates in this case. Your posts, your X tweets, whatever you want to call them, posts, I don't even know, they are reprinted and are republished on social media constantly. What is it like, just for you, to be at the center of this, where so many people are relying on you?
It is. It's a bit strange. I'll say that it's. And the thing about social media is that you have media takes it. So I've seen publications just print threads as their own article, and that's fine. You also have, like, as you may have known, like, online, everyone's voice is equal. There are Diddy supporters; they do exist. I'll just give you an example what it's been like. It's fun. When it's actually when the trial is going on, everything's out of my mind, and I really enjoy it because although it's word to word, you do try to capture, like, some things grab you more than others, or some ways that things are phrased just seem strange, and it seems very important to really nail it down. Like, I feel like it's not. I'm not saying it's an art form. It's a matter of transcription, but also there are things where you can tell how people are going to take it. But the great thing about it is that you don't editorialize. But for example, one aspect of this has been that because of the way social media is, there's been a few spoofers, right? Somebody said, like, that Prince had made an appearance, or Nicki Minaj. I don't know if you followed this, but I've gotten a lot of people have asked me to clarify it, so I've clarified it. Over the weekend, I did like an ebook just to say, like, these are my tweet.
Hold on, y'all.
So this is what I'm saying was said in the court, not what somebody with AI or something else did. But even in that, there are people that demand, I think, it's a serious case. These are serious charges, but it's also a media circus, right? So I try to cover it not with a light touch, but you can't, there is a defense too. There's a defense going on. There was yesterday, Nicole Westmoreland did a really kind of, if I can say it on your airwaves, a kick cross-examination of Don Richard. And I think you have to just say, like, that was good. But people that are extremely committed or mostly work in the domestic violence or sexual abuse space, they don't want to hear anything good about the defense strategy. And they think that you're being sort of dismissive or amoral. So I'm not trying to give a negative thing. It's very fun. I've really enjoyed it. And the thing there's every media in the world is there. And there was a push to try to get access to the videos, the freak-off videos. I put in a filing into the docket to say just that the lawyers' arguments, which are not going into the docket, should be put in the docket. And yesterday, Judge Subramanian said that they will go in, but on a week delay.
By the way, just to be clear, and as somebody who covered the Johnny Depp trial for 6 weeks and also has been covering the Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds case or the Harvey Weinstein trial, I was there for that. People go into these cases with, and I'm not blaming them, not judging them. They already go in with preconceived notions. They have a side. They don't want to hear what the other side is. And unfortunately, that's our job, is to present both sides. And, that's what the point of a trial is. But you mentioned the freak-off tapes, or these alleged freak-off tapes. Just to be clear and set the record straight, has anybody in that courtroom, including the jury, seen actual footage of sex tapes?
They're definitely, yes, but no one else except the jury. There was a whole fight about this, and there's a media coalition, right? They have this. It's like Davis, Wright, and Tremaine. They didn't really fight much more. They put in a single filing saying there's a constitutional right to see evidence in trial, which I agree with. They then proposed that there be pool reporters. This was also shot down by the judge, citing the Ghislaine Maxwell case. So basically, the jurors will have a screen and headphones, and that's it. No one else can see it. I think. Personally, I'll say this. I use the word allegedly a lot. I'm pretty sure the tapes exist. In the sense that I don't even think that the defense is saying that there weren't, multiple partner sex events that were filmed. I don't think that's part of their defense. The question is whether it was consensual, or whether, even if it was somehow abusive, if it really makes it out a racketeering case. So I was sort of asked, do I want to join into, like, unseal the freak-off tapes? And I'm not sure what people would do with it. I mean, credible media probably wouldn't show porn, like violent porn. Or who knows if it's violent. I haven't seen it. It might be important, though, because it might be important for someone, whether it's a pool reporter or not, to see it, because the question becomes, their defense is basically going to be, yes, he has a freaky sex life. Yes, he has threesomes. Yes, he films things. Yes, he pays escorts to come in and have sex with his girlfriend. But is that racketeering? That's their defense. And I think, in a way, the way the jurors may vote may depend on how they view not just the idea that there's a tape of a threesome being shown to them in a federal court, but, like, how does it seem? What are the Right? And which ones do they choose? Because it sounds like there was some violence in some of them, at least.
So look, I think from a legal point of view, there is clearly a value for the jury to see it, because does it corroborate what Cassandra Ventura and, let's say, Daniel Phillip were saying about what was happening in behind closed doors and whether or not Sean Combs was directing these events? It's one thing for somebody to testify to it. It's another thing to actually hear it on video, if that's what the videos actually show. I am concerned, of course, about it getting out and what people might do with it. I think that's a legitimate, real concern. But when you talk about the jury in general, seeing those tapes, seeing the evidence, can you glean anything from their reactions? I mean, how are they reacting to this?
I think people overdo it. I want to see, I've seen a lot of it. I don't mean to, and I understand why. There's a lot of airspace to fill up. I don't know how much we can read into it. I mean, if somebody said, like, if somebody vomited while watching it, I would report that. But I think that sometimes we can cut the cheese too fine in terms of how reading the facial expressions of jurors. I mean, let's just step back for a moment. The SDNY prosecutors, and I think federal prosecutors in general, have about a 95% batting average. So I'm not saying what's going to happen here, but I think it would be shocking if he were found not guilty on all charges. Maybe one, maybe two. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just saying if you look at the percentage. So people are going to be looking at the eyes and say they didn't seem shocked enough. There was jury selection. People, covered it, and they thought it was fun. When you got to hear in court somebody say, I get my news from TikTok, and there were a number of, like, one lady who worked for HBO. There were people who covered that kind of stuff. I zeroed in on a particular juror. I don't know why, but except that the person said that he worked at the United Nations. So I used to cover the United Nations very closely. And then he said he worked in the United Nations Counterterrorism Office, but he didn't ever deal with U.S. law enforcement. And having been there, I know that's not true. I know that the U.S. they have meetings. Like, people go from HSI. It happens. So I'm not angry at this. What I found, this is what I want to sort of give this flavor. I thought it was interesting to report on this. I figured out more about the guy, but I thought I won't report it because you're not supposed to. This is an anonymous jury, etc. At the same time, the public has a right to know how the juror is selected to judge Sean Combs. So the judge yesterday, or maybe 2 days ago, said very, very kind of archly, no one better be outing these jurors. That's certainly not my goal, but it seems to me, this is why I'm roundabout coming back to you, people wanted to be on this jury. Like, I cover a lot of jury selections and a lot of trials, and you usually have people not trying to get on the plane. You usually have people saying, I have a vacation planned, and the judge says, you're going to have to cancel it. Or, I have to pick up my kid at 5, and he says, well, if we want to at 3, can't you do it? This was entirely different. This, you had people downplaying what they knew about the case. I'm not sure why. I don't know if people think they can write a book about it. Maybe it's interesting. The UN guy can't figure out his motives. Maybe he thinks he's going to be paid and it's more interesting than these interminable meetings inside the UN. It's a jury that's predisposed to be interested in this. And whether it's because they want to convict or whether it's because they might want to acquit, I don't know. And I don't know what kind of a person would want to acquit. But I meet them online, but I don't think they made it onto the jury.
Well, this is one of the most high-profile trials, impactful criminal trials I've seen in quite some time. Again, going circle back to Johnny Depp, Amber Heard. I mean, that jury was glued to everything that was happening in that case, and they couldn't ignore just how massive of a case that was. So let me ask you this. As somebody who goes in and day out, you've been seeing the evidence, you've been hearing what the prosecution's been doing. Does their case make sense to you? Every day, as you listen to the testimony, you say, okay, I see how that helps prove racketeering. I see how that helps prove the transportation to engage in prostitution. Oh, I see how that helps prove sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Or are there parts of it you say, I can't quite understand. It feels a little disjointed. I'm curious because let me tell you.
Yeah.
The viral 30-second pink salt trick that melts fat was actually featured on the Today Show. But for the
as an attorney, when I explain the elements of these crimes, it is very, very complicated. And I'm curious, talking about the jury, if they're going to be following it. I think a big part of this all comes down to closing arguments, how it's ultimately crystallized and summarized for the jury. But are you following it? Does it make sense to you, the prosecution's case so far?
I have in my head the people that are like, how can you say this? But I personally, I think this is it's a unique racketeering, sex trafficking prosecution in the sense that, just as an example, I covered one where basically like a crack gang took runaways from New Jersey that were 15 years old and sold them as prostitutes on Long Island. They came from New Jersey, they sold them on Long Island. And it was definitely by force. When people tried to leave, they were beaten up, there were people flashing guns. Here, I feel I mean, he's a terrible boss. You heard, yesterday there was the personal assistant who worked 20 hours a day and was told this is Diddy's world. And so there's grist for the people that want to say that it's kind of overcharged, or at least the conventional ways in which these statutes are used are not a natural fit to a kind of thuggish music, megalomaniac, and worse. Of course, I mean, I don't know what adjectives I should use, he's terrible. But it's not surprising to me that there are people that say, wait a second, she could have left. And of course, then there's a bunch of expert opinions saying why people don't leave. And that's a whole other kettle of fish. But whether that can turn some of these things into sort of the conventional view of what, it's like sex trafficking. If an escort is paid to fly, if an escort Jules that they wanted to see is paid to fly from New York to Los Angeles, is he being sex trafficked? Or is he just plying his trade, whatever it is? I didn't know that these trades were even legal, right? There's a service, Cowboys for Angels. I didn't know that you could just hire a male prostitute online, but apparently anything goes. So that's what I mean. Is I could see some jurors saying, wait a second. And I don't think they're bad people to wonder. It's one thing to sort of blame the victim. And it's another thing to say, is this the coercion that's needed under the statute? And I think a lot's going to come down to that.
These are fair, legitimate questions that the jury should have when they go into deliberations. They should be thinking about this. But it seems to me from what you said, and from what I've been seeing based on your reporting and other reporting, the prosecution may have a more straightforward path to convict him of transportation to engage in prostitution, where necessarily you're transporting alleged sex workers and alleged victims for purposes of prostitution. Does that seem like at this point in the trial? And by the way, for anybody who knows, we're recording right now on Tuesday morning. Does it seem like they might have the goods?
Yeah, absolutely. That seems to be actually what the thing was. There's no. And the thing is, I wanted sort of. I'm sure you saw in the sort of pretrial back and forth. This is, I believe that statute is, I'm a lawyer as well, but I believe it's called the Mann Act, right? The MAN, not man, not like man for sale, but it was the Mann Act. And one of the sharpest members of the defense team prior to the two Georgians coming on is a woman called Alexandra Shapiro. She's like an appellate specialist. She represents Sam Bankman-Fried on his appeal. And she wrote this kind of filing saying that the Mann Act is racist, saying that it was initially enacted for Jack Johnson, the boxer, for whom Miles Davis wrote a record. So I anticipate in closing, probably it'll be Agnifilo doing the closing. Maybe it should be Brian Steele or Nicole Westmoreland. It's not for me to say, but I can imagine that argument being made. A jury can't throw a statute out, but I think they're going to try to. I agree that that's a very strong. It seems like a slam dunk count. But if you can get somebody on the jury saying, wait a second, this was like a black superstar, and you're trying to take him down by using an old statute they used against Jack Johnson, it only takes one,
I think they were trying to say in their opening statement, he paid for these people for their time and experience and not necessarily prostitution, which I'm sorry, that feels a little bit like stretch to me, but it's a tough charge. You look, I think we can both agree, a lot of this comes down to Cassandra Ventura Fine and her testimony and what the jury makes of it. From watching all of it and the cross-examination, she was on the stand for several days, a lot of evidence, a lot of messages. Does it seem to you that it favors more her as an alleged victim or a willing participant? What did you make of her testimony at the end of the day?
I think it can be both. Yeah, I think it can be both. I think there's no question that they showed with the text messages that for much of it, she was not only a participant, she was the organizer. She was the one making the calls and buying the supplies. I think she was a very compelling witness. I think her sort of, and I'm not saying that she chose that approach, but she was very factual. A few times she got emotional, but it was really depressing what she was saying. She wasn't proud to be saying it. I don't think they were able to make people feel that she was in it for the money. She's already gotten paid. I mean, I think that also makes a big difference. Like, what's in it for her? Other than, you could say she's being vindictive, but I think she was a very compelling witness. This is, again, just looking at it as a battle. I don't think their approach to cross-examining her was the best one. I've seen the Ana Maria Estevao in other cases. She's a good lawyer, but the approach was too scattershot and reading text messages. I honestly think if they'd gone with this Nicole Westmoreland approach that they took to Don Richard, I don't know how it would have worked out because, with Don Richard, they basically said, as you saw, you're lying. You gave 8 versions of this. You're a liar. And they never came right. Maybe they thought if they tried that with Cassie, it would just blow up in their face and she was very sympathetic. But I don't feel that they really tested it in the same way that they did with Don Richard. And I feel that might come back to bite them because at the end of those days, it's a pretty compelling story. And I think people can relate to it. They got into it. Yes, they were. It did serve her career. You could say a lot of things about it. But once somebody's hitting you in the head and making you do freak-offs while you have a, urinary tract infection. These are the details that I think are going to stick in people's mind, because no matter what you say about consent, as she said, nobody wants to do that. That it speaks for itself. Like, these things were painful, and I don't think that they finished with all their evidence. I was really struck yesterday by the sort of routine violence. There were violent incidents that Cassie didn't speak about, even the whole thing with the egg and the frying pan. And Kerry Morgan came out with more incidents of being dragged down the hall 50 yards in some Jamaican resort. I think this is going to be a cumulative thing, and it's going to be very difficult for them to rebut, and they kind of lost their chance. The other big issue here is that they're pretty much not going to be able to call her back. Normally you could call a witness back, but because she's having the child, Judge Subramanian, he made an evidentiary ruling against the prosecution, but entirely premised on the fact we're not calling her back. So that was the big one, and I would say the defense kind of, if they wanted to really test that story, they should have taken a harsher approach. Not harsher, but a more conventionally cross-examination approach.
Well, look, it was no surprise that they wanted her on the stand as quickly as possible. 8.5 months, 9 months pregnant. I mean, they're having trouble finding alleged victim number 3. If you lose alleged victim number 1, what are you talking about with the prosecution's case? Look, I think that they have established that Cassandra Ventura was physically abused. I think that with the video evidence, the photos, the testimony, the corroborating testimony of other witnesses, I think the jury can accept that there was physical abuse. Of course, it becomes the question, does it rise to sex trafficking? Does it rise to racketeering? Which brings me to David James. So I was waiting for the testimony of those who worked with Sean Combs. If you're going to be talking about a criminal enterprise, if you're going to be talking about him using his businesses and his resources and those who worked around him to further criminal activities, you got to have those people testify. And I think that's going to be what we see moving forward. What did you take away so far from his testimony? Because, again, to have that inner circle is very interesting.
Again, we're doing this Tuesday morning, so he hasn't finished yet on direct. I think here the prosecution kind of blew it. Like, they had a certain amount of time. I mean, who knows? Maybe they can fix it today. But being a bad boss is not enough. Working 20 hours a day and being a megalomaniac is not a crime. I mean, I wouldn't want to work there, but I think that they
forced labor, right? They tried to.
I know that's all. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you followed the Larry Ray trial. It was a sex cult dad in Sarah Lawrence College. He literally made people forcibly go down and dig holes on a farm in North Carolina and put like tinfoil tourniquets around their sexual organs. This was forced labor. The idea of a guy that wanted to work in fashion being willing to work 20 hours a day. That's just called New York, or a certain kind of New York. In the Harvey Weinstein retrial, there was a guy that testified as his personal assistant, saying he had 3 phones and 2 BlackBerries, and would drive around with Harvey, basically handing him phones and him saying, screw you, or 500 million, And so I think that they need to get this guy. It didn't have the flavor to me, at least yesterday, of this is a criminal enterprise. It felt like this is a kind of like megalomaniacal. I don't know what rap stars with their own record label, what the continuum of behavior is. But I feel like they were setting, that's the problem with these breaks in the trial days. If I was a juror at the end of yesterday, I would have gone home and said like, okay, he's or whatever, but they might have wanted to start with a bang. Like with Cassie, they start with a bang. It's like, here's the video of the hotel. Again, I can't do it for them. I'm sure that they're building up, and they have other people. They have a chef coming on that's going to be this Jordan Atkinson. I mean, they have a bunch of people. So I think to make it really racketeering, it feels to me like they're going to want to have the security guys. They're going to have guys that like had guns, that they alluded to them like grabbing the guns and going to find Suge Knight. Like, that's good. That's having recently covered the trial of a local drill rapper called KEYGLOCK. That's, they focus very much on like the guys getting together in an apartment in the Bronx, grabbing the guns, shooting, going 20 blocks away and shooting at people. With Combs, nobody knows what he did with Suge Knight. There's the burned car. But I think they should give me more of that, less BlackBerry, more gunplay, or more something.
This brilliant device keeps your home cool in summer, even during heat waves and power outages. It's smaller than a
Hopefully it's
lunchbox.
coming.
There's any room with
more gunplay or more something.
No, I hear you. I hear it, because they basically have to persuade this jury that he is this leader of a criminal enterprise that was engaged in a pattern of criminal activity, including the systematic exploitation and abuse of women over a period of time. We're still in the beginning stages. It's going to be an 8-week trial, but I hear your reservations and concerns with the prosecution's case. I did think James was interesting when he recounted this alleged conversation that he had with Cassandra Ventura, where she allegedly said, man, this lifestyle is crazy. He suggested, why don't you leave? And she says, I can't get out. She told him that Combs controlled her music career, paid for her apartment, gave her an allowance. That's also similar to testimony that we heard from another witness as well. Do you think that that has been articulated well? Because I know that the defense has said this is just a relationship built on jealousy and anger, and he was trying to help her career. But do you think the idea that she couldn't
not with
leave,
10 albums and only one went out
of Sean Combs, do you think
over
that
10 years
has been properly articulated?
I think that they're on much weaker ground when they say things like, he didn't put my records out. Like, I don't mean to say sorry, too bad. It doesn't feel like coercion. You know what I mean? Like, baseball players can't just change teams when they want. And I don't want to be dismissive, but I think the looming threat of violence, it seems to me, it should be what they should be focused on. At times they do. At times they say, like, she was only able to sort of flap her wings when...
Listen, let's be honest. 10 years. 10 years. 10 albums, one went out. 10 years. He threatened more times to expose her freak-offs than he made attempts to get. I don't know why my eyes running. That he attempts that he made to put out some music. The energy that he used to threaten and sabotage her career, 10 albums, one went out, 10 years. How many freak-offs? Hundreds. How many times did he threaten, extorted money from her mama, blowing up people's cars? No. No. He did not put the energy in the freak-offs that he should have in her music career. Period. Let's keep going, because I'm almost out of juice.
She was in South Africa far away and he couldn't get to her physically. And that every time she tried to do anything, he bashed on the door with a hammer. Now you're getting into, why were you afraid to leave? Because even if you did leave, the guy's going to be at your door with a hammer. You know what I mean? But to say, I couldn't leave because it would hurt my career, it's a shame, but I think there are many people in that situation, not just in the music industry, but like all over the place. But you shouldn't be in a situation where if you say no, they still go forward and do it, or if you say I'm leaving, they bash on your door with a hammer.
I think the prosecution has an easy answer. You know why she couldn't leave? Exhibit A, 2016 tape. That's
exactly. No, I agree, and I think that they should be getting. I think that they err when they even. That's all they have to stick to. They don't have to get in. They're trying to get into these more subtle forms of control. And I can imagine one or more jurors, when they actually deliberate, saying, like, wait a second, isn't this what they're trying to tell us is coercion? And it's going to take some other juror to say, like, let's just go back to the video. You've covered these things. This hype is not going to, not hype, but this hoopla is not going to end for maybe by the 4th of July, as Judge Subramanian said. But it's going to be very interesting in deliberation to see, like, what exhibits they request. Because then you try to read the tea leaves and how long they take. It's anybody's guess. But I think, honestly, if I were a juror trying to convince my fellow jurors to convict, I would just say, let's go back to that video. Because you're absolutely right. Like, it speaks for itself. You don't have to be committing violence every day to coerce somebody. You have to just do it enough that it's in their head.
I also think one of the more concrete examples is the plane incident. So
I'm almost out of juice, y'all.
Shows her a video of the freak off.
Please hit my lights.
They land. He wants a freak off. He gets a freak off. Now let me ask you about this, because I know your time is limited. I know you have to jump into court. His demeanor watching Sean Combs in court. What are we not seeing?
I mean, I think he's definitely, everyone was focused on, like, his hair's gone white and he's wearing sweaters, I was going to say, actually, you've got on your Sean Combs uniform today, because he's wearing. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean embarrassing. But I'm saying, like, it's a very I've seen a lot of, for example, the other rapper I'm talking about, local drill rapper KEYGLOCK, wore a suit. You can choose what the BOP gives you to wear, and he's chosen this look, which is very kind of, it is, now that I say that you're wearing it, I don't want to characterize it, but it's all good. I think that I'm always watching to see which of his lawyers he's actually having a real discussion with. And I think I'm starting to see, and maybe I'm looking for it, but that Brian Steele and Nicole Westmoreland, here's my prediction is that they're going to get, because it's a team of 9, right? So they're choosing, it's like a baseball team. You're like, who do I send in as a pinch hitter? And they did. They had Westmoreland as a pinch hitter. it was going to be Mark Agnifilo who was going to do the cross with Don Richard. And clearly over the weekend, they decided, no, we're going to make a switch. We're bringing in the flame-throwing, left-handed reliever or whatever. And I wonder whether that decision was made by the team of 9 or by Combs himself. And I think that's the kind of, I'm less concerned of did he glare at Cassie or whatever? He's not stupid. He's not going to be intimidating a witness. It's a very studied approach that he's taken. But it is interesting to see not just who he hugs and bumps fists with or does the hard thing to, but which lawyers he's actually saying, what did that mean and how can we get this witness? And I think you're going to see Georgia up, and sadly, the SDNY defense bar they're being challenged here. They're being taken to a new Georgia standard that I don't know if they can meet.
And I'll tell you what, we are going to follow it every step of the way with you, Matthew Russell Lee, any Inner City Press. Hope everybody can check it out. Thank you so much again for coming on, and thank you so much again for the great work.
Totally, love your show. It's really
thanks, man.
Okay, bye-bye.
Appreciate it. And that is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as
hey, y'all, I really need to go and charge it up. Let me see how long this one is that I have. Yeah, let's go here.
Have his name. However, in a last-minute submission, right before we went to lunch, the prosecution brought him in.
Prostitution?
We were like, what is going on? They literally sat him down, and they said, are you willing? Are you planning to plead the fifth for everything? He said, yes, I am. We said, okay, what is going on? On top of that, there is an expert that testified that completely justified everything that Cassie said and done. She was fantastic. We'll get that to a second, but let's get back to the surprise witness. The surprise witness has just been given a last-minute immunity deal by the prosecution. I repeat, a last-minute immunity deal. Diddy's defense is reeling. Remember the beginning of this trial? What did the prosecution say? The prosecution said, if you are not a witness, you are a co-conspirator. Judging by the way this gentleman decided to plead the fifth, he is somewhere along the lines of the co-conspirator. However, today, in a last-minute thing, he stepped tippy-toe over to the prosecution side. What's up, guys? We are live right outside of the courthouse. You know the vibe.
Do y'all still hear me? Do y'all hear her?
Diddy's team is reeling. You would not get immunity if you did and needed. Diddy's team is 100% reeling. So what does this mean? What is he going to testify to? Well, first of all, let's talk about the actual witness. Hold on, I have his name written down. His name is George Kaplan. There is so much behind that name. He knows things in and out. Renee Flotscraft, thank you so much for becoming a Title 12 member. What's up? Okay, so listen. Kid Cudi is expected to testify.
You're the best.
Oh, hey, thank you. Say hi.
Everybody.
Okay, so listen.
Choosing internet shouldn't be confusing. It should be based on how you live. Whether you're a casual streamer.
Thank you. Say hi.
Everybody.
Okay, so listen. Kid Cudi is expected to testify. I gotta be honest with you. The expert witnesses are running late. And with this last-minute immunity deal that happened live in court, it was so exciting. You know I love it, right? It's no drama like the legal drama. But this last-minute, did I give you guys the fit check? This is the fit check, just navy blue. You know, trying to do what I can. Emphasis on trying, right? But with this last-minute immunity deal, this changes the game. Diddy was not, 3 times the glam, thank you so much for the super chat. Diddy was not, I repeat, was not checking or expecting people in any way, shape, or form to flip live in court. George Kaplan, people are saying Diddy's team is perturbed. They are disturbed. It looked like there was a lot of kerfuffle in the court. The defense was shocked, although they did not offer any objections. Why? Because the defense cannot object to a plea deal. They cannot do anything. And a lot of people are like, oh, the defense wasn't shaken. They 100% was. However, they did not know that this person was taking an immunity deal because it's none of their business. It's something that goes on with the prosecution. They also cannot object. They cannot do anything because then it'll look like you are pressuring witnesses. It would look like you were trying to do witness intimidation. So all they could do was just sit there and just take it. But they were shocked. again, the prosecution looked a little bit, they used a little bit of legal savvy, and last minute before we were about to go to lunch, and it's a good thing I literally ran out the courtroom because I wanted to get the tea to y'all. But then all of a sudden, I saw the federal marshals like ushering someone in, and I was like, oh wait, it's not over. And the jury had been let out. So I was like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. You're taking a witness stand, the jury's been let out, and it's last minute, and the look on Diddy's faces when he walked in, he sat down, they offered an immunity deal. They said, and this was a last minute immunity deal. They asked, has this gentleman read over the plea agreement? He said, I have not. The immunity deal. Then they said, okay, has your lawyer looked at it? He said, I have not. That lets you know how last minute it is. The prosecution says it's okay. I have a paper copy right here. If you guys want to look over it really quick, they said, okay. They looked over it in court in real time. His lawyer reviewed it and he said, okay, it looks good. They said, okay, Your Honor, it looks good. We would like to enter in the immunity deal. You guys, Diddy is done. I'm going to be down, and I'm not leaving yet, but I'm going to be down in a few minutes to actually talk about. Let me tell you something. The government does not bring immunity unless you are bringing something big, especially when this person decided to plead the fifth. Also, Hibiscus Rose, what's up, Mama? Thank you for buying a membership, gifting a membership. And Valerie Watkins, what's up, Mama? Okay, so let's get into this, all right? Okay, so what are big things that happen, right? Again, George Kaplan I'm going to put my ear to the streets and find out everything we can about George Kaplan, but baby, he's going to be testifying soon. So, again, Diddy's team was shocked. They were appalled. They did not object. I know you don't think you, they did not object. But again, Lloyd Diggs, thank you so much. They did not object. But again, you cannot object to an immunity deal. The defense doesn't have anything to do. All you can do is just be mad, sad, scared, and surprised all at the same time. What's up? Ooh-wee. Nevitz Nonak, thank you so much for the super chat. And Haneen, thank you so much for joining Tabitha. And you guys, listen. This is why I'm gonna have to go back in a few minutes because, but let me tell y'all, I'm gonna have to go back in a few minutes because the expert witness is still testifying, and that's good too. I'm gonna tell you what happened so far. But again, you don't offer immunity unless it's something major. You do not offer immunity. Y'all, listen. Diddy, oh, you know what? I'm going to issue not a correction, but let me get clear. A lot of y'all, not a lot, but, 25% of y'all, and I want to be clear and unbiased. Some people said yesterday when I said that Diddy was trying to extort Cassie's mom that I was putting 20 on 10 because Cassie's mom sent the 20K to Diddy, but then she sent it back. And some people thought that I skipped over the fact that Diddy ended up giving Cassie's mom the money. So I want to put it out there, right? And they said because Diddy gave Cassie's mom back the money he demanded, that can't have been extortion. Okay,
that's a lie.
But let me just say this, okay? Lloyd,
the extortion is what he asked for, not when he returned it. Come on, people.
Hold on. Green Eye Show said, great job, T said, thank you. Also, Felicia Gordon, thank you so much for the super chat. Also, Gwen said, you're doing a super job. Our eyes and ears, that's right. Baby, y'all just got breaking news. But let me just address this really quick, because I need to, you guys, right? So in the court testimony, Diddy did demand 20K from Cassie's mom. And then he did send it back after she sent the money. Okay. People were saying, Tisa, how does that equal extortion? In my mind, it is extortion. Because you have to look at it as a totality. Cassie had just sent her mommy an email saying, Diddy is threatening me. He's saying he's going to hurt me and Kid Cudi. He also says he's going to release two explicit videos, one on Christmas Day and a few days on or about. She CC'd her mommy and she CC'd Capricorn Clark into the email, okay? Capricorn Clark at that time was Diddy's assistant. Just listen to the totality because I'm sick of people putting things in little boxes. Oh, this and that. Let me plead my case, if I will. And I'm going to give you the reasoning as to why I said that. Because let me tell you something. I stand 10 toes down on my thoughts and opinions. And I know people think that I sensationalize, but baby, there's something behind it. Yes, I'm dramatic, but don't act like I don't actually look at things and I'm fair about this, right? Okay, this is Kareen Al-Amin. You said great reporting. I'll wait for your updates all day. Okay, so, again, so he sent the Cassie, no, so Cassie's on the plane, and she sends that. The mom sees the email. She knows that Diddy's assistant is actually CC'd into it. Diddy's assistant is Kaplan Clark. So Diddy knows that Cassie's mom knows that not only did he threaten to hurt her, but he also said that he's going to release 2 explicit tapes. The mom is the first time hearing about this. Now, don't forget, Cassie's been lying to her mom about whether she's in an abusive situation. Cassie gets home. The mom sees her baby banged up and blue. Even so bad, she takes photos of her baby's whole body just to actually show what is going on. Now, in this mist going on, that she knows that Diddy is threatening to release 2 tapes, and the mom and the family is bracing for it. They're trying to talk to Cassie. They're taking pictures of bruises, and Cassie tells her mom, Diddy said he's also going to hurt me, and when he does it, he's going to be out of the country, so it's not linked back to me, okay? In the midst of all going on, Diddy knows Cassie's mom knows, Cassie's mom knows, right? They receive an email from Diddy saying he is demanding $20K or $20K for all the money he invested in the daughter. Now, did he say, give me the money or I'm going to release the tapes? No. Is all of that going on? And in the background, when the mom gets a request from someone that sent her baby back black and blue for $20K, what would make a mother whose daughter just got sent back to you black and K? You want $20K? Ninja, the $20K is off of the bruises you put on my daughter. Consider it $5K for each punch hit. Actually, the way he was hitting her, consider that $1,000 for each punch, hit, and kick you did to her. What would make parents who know this person is threatening their daughter go and take out a line of credit from their house to pay this man who has been clearly abusing, threatening, and continues to threaten their daughter, $20K from their line of home equity? Would indeed, unless they feel like it was a demand, and unless they feel it was extorted, and they sent him that.
No, it wasn't. It's not a
people
gift.
Want me to clear the record.
How do you get a gift out of that? How do you get a gift out of that? Keep all that money now. No, it's not a gift. He just sent back the money that he extorted. He asked for $20K, or he was going to put her daughter's sex videos out, which is revenge porn. He wanted the money back that he had gave. He said that was his girlfriend, right? So he wanted his money back. So they sent him the money. Right? The $20K he was demanding, that he was extorting, or he was going to put out sex tapes. They sent it to him. I'm assuming somebody on his payroll said, oh, no, dude. Oh, and she's wired that money to you? Oh, decline that, send that back. And he realized the mistake he made. And he sent it back 4 days later. That was not a gift. He was trying to undo his extortion.
And I will. Diddy sent that money back 4 days after he received it. And somehow people think that absconds Diddy from any type of extortion.
Absolutely
but
not.
I say. No.
Yeah, listen.
Let the record reflect.
The minute he requested it was extortion. The minute it went into his account, extortion, paid, and then he got a sense of himself and he tried to undo the extortion. No, shit, no. That's fair right there. That was enough for this whole thing to get started. I'll tell you that now.
That extortion is an inchoate crime. Just like robbery, it's an inchoate crime, meaning I believe, and I'll double check, it is complete once you go into the act of getting it. For instance, so maybe it was an extortion. Actually, it was. He demanded money. It was under the guise of what was going on. I'm going to release. They gave the money. Once you did that, the crime was complete. The fact that you had second thoughts and you gave the money back, that does not in any way absolve you from the fact that you tried to, in my mind, and I'm not the judge, you tried to extort Cassie's mom. The same way if I was robbing you, right? hold on really quick, y'all. Sorry. So George Kaplan, it's one of Diddy's former assistants. That's who just got immunity, and he is going to fly like an eagle. And they said the only reason he won't get the immunity is if he lied. The immunity could be pulled back is if he lies or perjures himself in the answer. Shout out to George Kaplan, another one of Diddy's assistants, got immunity. It was a surprise witness. Diddy is reeling, baby. This isn't good. But let me just finish this. Saida Brown, thank you so much for the super chat. Because you guys know, also Connie Cruz, thank you so much for the super chat. And Dr. Payne Nestor, what's up, Mama? Thank you so much for the super chat. Brown Sugar, thank you for joining the family. And Tonya, thank you so much for the super chat. So I get down to this, and let the church say amen. Just because you, to me, look like you extorted Cassie's mom. And I think this is my feeling that you did it because you use your money to control. You use your money to control Cassie. You use your money to control people around you. Okay? I think that he thought by asking for that 20K, Cassie's people would be like, oh my God, we don't have the money. We don't have the money.
y'all,
We don't
I'm
have
gonna
the
have
money.
to come back.
And James Johnson said, thank you, Tisa. Hit that like button, y'all. I think they were like, yo, we don't have the money. We don't have the money. We don't have the money. And they would encourage Cassie to go on.
Yeah, I'll be back. I need to get another device.
He had no idea that they loved
can't
their daughter
hold
so much.
this.
They said, we can all go work and we'll be homeless before I send you back to that month.
Okay, so let me tell you what I'm gonna do. Hold on. What time is it? Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna end this. I will be back at 3 on another device. Because I can't keep holding this. I need this hand. And y'all ain't supported my platform yet, so I ain't gonna be able to sit here and hold this. So I'll be back, y'all.